I mean, there's been a couple of things that were pieces of shit, like The Hunt. Really disappointed me.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah.
I did see that this week. You didn't like The Hunt?
No, I should have. I love The Most Dangerous Game. It's so fucking empty. It's sort of the first 15 minutes were like, oh, cool, you're just going to tear down both sides of political idiocy and kind of laugh at everyone.
We shouldn't even get into that because that's a 2020, so we should save that for like the regular podcast.
I think I already talked about it though.
Did you talk about The Hunt? I don't think we did.
Okay, we'll save it. Yeah, we're not talking 2020 films anyway. We're talking the past. I just wanted to mention to Jeremy, who just started The Americans. The Americans fucking goddamn kicks ass. Talk about a show that is way better than it has any right to be. That became an absolute goddamn obsession for me. The Americans, it just gets better and better with every season. I mean, right from the start, that first episode. I mean, I turned it on expecting to be watching a photo show that I was kind of, over the course of a year, I'd end up watching half of it. But it was just one of those things I was going to be mindless. But you chuck that goddamn thing on, and then within 10 minutes of the show, it has that whole unbroken sequence to fucking Fleetwood Mac's Tusk as they're stalking, and they've got that great static camera that's looking down one street and down the other street as you're watching the stalking going on and the tracking, and it just had, I was just like, what the fuck is this? Why is this so good straight away? And it just got better and better and better, and the Americans fucking rules.
Ian, if you liked the movie version, I actually like the movie version of Watchmen better than the comic personally, and I love the comic and I've read it numerous times. I like what the movie did, but I think the movie trimmed away a lot of the fat, and I do like the way they changed the ending. But as you said, like the way that they did the squid thing in the show was a good example of how it could have been done in the movie. But the movie, I like the movie personally. I think the movie's better, but the show is. If you've read if you've read the comic, then I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you haven't and you like the movie, still give it a watch. Some of the things might be a little bit confusing for you, but I would totally recommend picking up the comic if you haven't read it. It's one of the best comics ever written, so definitely worth your time.
And whoever wrote The Leftovers The Leftovers is the single greatest thing that fucking Lindelof has ever done. Leftovers is I'll rave even hard about that than I do Watchmen, and I really fucking liked Watchmen.
The Leftovers is one I've been meaning to watch too. Yeah, I've been wanting to watch that as well. I heard that's.
Anyway, I think we've got enough people to start the jam.
Let's fire it up, man.
Forgive me, by the way. To the audience of however many of you there are. I'm kind of behind the 8 ball this morning and catching up. So I left you then to grab some caffeine, which is like a ghost. Welcome to Film Frak. I am Film Frak Adam. I am coming to you from Perth, Australia on a rainy Saturday. And my cohort and partner in crime and the sensible one.
Yeah, I'm John, all the way here in New Hampshire. We're coming at you guys from 2 totally different time zones. He's in another day. It's like Back to the Future. And welcome to this is our first episode of a new show we're going to called Comfort Food. So we're still going to do our regular podcast where we'll be doing all the latest movies, reviewing 2020 films or all the latest review type things. But this is going to give us a chance to talk about some of our old favorites and in a completely new form. And we're going to test it out today with we've got a loose idea of how we want it to go, but we might change it up slightly. But we hope you guys like it because this looks to be a lot of fun. I'm pretty excited about this myself.
Yeah, I mean, I want to tell you the truth. This was, when we first started doing video podcasts, the first thing we asked you was, what do you want us to do? And everyone was like, do a retro show and talk about old films and shit. And we went, that'd be fucking fun. And where do you start with old films? Because there's so many we love.
So much, yeah.
And and because we're in isolation, because we've been going through this fucking thing, like naturally, I know I've been drifting to films that I grew up with and films that I've seen. Films that are in my fucking DNA. They're not even movies anymore. They're just people I hang out with that happen to be in a fantasy world. But it's like, you know every beat, every camera cut, every fucking musical beat. You just eat, breathe, and sleep these films. And in some ways, some of these choices are just films that literally made me fall in love with movies. But to be clear, these aren't necessarily favorite films. They're literally the chicken soup films. They're, in these trying times, there's something really comforting about going back to these films and just being able to and remembering a better time, and also, quite frankly, you know, remembering why you love the films. And it was a really, really tough list to fucking, like, we've got 5 films each to talk about today. So technically we're doing 10. And it was, you know, I sat down and within friggin' 5 minutes of trying to do this, there was like 60 or 70 films I wrote down, literally. And then I don't know how you ended up culling yours. What I did was, the first thing I did was okay, I can only try and limit myself to only 1 film from each genre. Because I do have a bias towards certain genres. You know, there's a lot of sci-fi that are favorite films. There's a lot of Westerns that are favorite films. You know, there's a lot of, especially when we're talking about comfort food, you know, so I'm talking about the films that I grew up with, watching matinee films and stuff in the afternoon and things like that. And so that was the first cull, which helped. And then the second one was kind of trying to make a distinction where it was kind of an overview where the films I was choosing in some way shaped my love for cinema. That each element of them fed something. It's not like they were, I mean, I think these they are all childhood favorites, but that wasn't necessarily the prerequisite. And then the last one was what you mentioned too, which I didn't take into account until you mentioned, but the fact that, hey, let's think about the fact that certain films that we obviously would rather talk about in other contexts. And that Arnold example, you know, for instance, you know, how many Arnold films can we put into this? You know, when we both grew, you know, there's plenty of, you know, the Terminator or Conan or, you know, any number of those films could have made. I mean, both of those were in my original list. Yeah. I was like, oh, hang on, we'll probably talk about those. And the same with Westerns.
Like those will be like their own show. Like that's one of the things where we're trying to come at, like, that's why we wanted to try it this way first. Just to, you know, to let everyone fill everyone a little bit more. So we like that whole idea of like you said, Arnold, like we could have a whole show about Arnold, and we probably will, rather than like bringing up like one now. Like we'll just do a whole Arnold show at some point, or like a fucking Kurt Russell show or John Carpenter show, or this gives us a lot to play around with. And when I was picking my movies, honestly, it was just like it was a chance to turn off the movie snob and like not talking about like the movies that, like, you know, we're like going like 4-star, 5-star films, like the stuff that we get really snobby about with, like we do with our 2020 stuff or our modern stuff. But the stuff, like you said, like the throwback stuff, the stuff that, you know, beat by beat, that you watched like 1,000 times, like these are all movies that they might not be the best movies, but they're fucking movies that I love. Like I love all of these films, and I can't, like, I there's just something about them. Like there's nostalgia, they're nostalgic, but they hold up still. Like they transcend that. They transcend being like a bad, ironic bad movie, because they're not ironic bad. Like they're just good movies you want to like have a beer and hang out with your buddies and watch, that kind of movie. So, and we're gonna have totally different. We're gonna have totally different, like our it's so different, our lists. They're so different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my list, and although I didn't consciously go, oh, I'm not. I mean, I you know, there were certain films that you're kind of describing, like the trashier films, or the films that aren't necessarily on any metric of good or bad, just ones that are nostalgic favorites. Most of those that weren't good films, I kind of decided would be in different categories that I'd be talking about, like fantasy films. You know, like we talk fantasy films so often in sword and sorcery films that it's inevitable we're going to do a sword and sorcery fantasy film.
Yeah, of course.
And so I kind of was like, you know, and so many of my kind of films that fall into the category you're talking about are those. And, you know, The Last Starfighter, or, you know, a lot of those family favorites from the 80s. And so I didn't purposely do it, but, you know, I kind of think that every film I chose is kind of a fucking great film as well. But I didn't purposely do it that way. I just evidently can't turn off the movie snob.
Well, that's why I think this is going to be fun too, because like some of this is, it's so, like these movies are each so personal to us, and like some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, you're going to fucking roll your eyes at and like wince about, which is like going to be fun to talk about, because like then I have to explain like why I like them so much or why they mean something to me, or just what it is. And like, and it's going to be, it's almost like it's a guilty pleasure show is what this is, kind of, in a way. Some of it's guilty pleasure, but some of it's just, it's so hard to explain that, but let's.
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe in the term guilty pleasure as such, and I don't think you do either, but it is a good shorthand. But again, I have a guilty pleasure list, and that's not these films.
No, that's so yeah. That's all right. That's fair. That's fair.
For me. I mean, I you know, like everything, I fucking overthought this and tried to figure out what are the films that literally, you know, when I find out that, you know, a family member's dying of fucking cancer, what films do I go and fucking watch? That just will help me through that. Or, you know, when the world's got a global pandemic going on and it's burning, you know, what films do I go and watch? And that's kind of what I specifically tried to focus on.
That's right, Jeremy.
I think we've set ourselves up enough. But I will just mention straight away, like Ian has just mentioned, like The Long Riders and Black Rain as films for him that he loves.
Black Rain's fun. Black Rain's a fun one.
The Long Rider, Walter Hill's fucking The Long Riders is such a fucking kick-ass film. Yeah. I actually watched it again. I mean, it's one I watch all the fucking time. And yeah, I re-watched that maybe 2 months ago. It's exactly in the context of what we're talking about.
What's up, Wayne? I haven't talked to Wayne in a while. How's it going, man? Look at this. All right, man. Let's dive into it. Let's just get into it.
Okay.
Yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah, they
do. So I think we're gonna just alternate and let's just get into it. Let's talk about the movies we love, and I guess I'll start off by. So
what's on the TV behind you, sir? I haven't commended you online for just how good this fucking background is, dude. It made me moist.
Oh man, I'm glad you like it. On this screen, we'll be watching the 1985 Berry Gordy classic, The Last Dragon, which I fucking love. The Last Dragon is like an all-time favorite of mine. I fucking love The Last Dragon. Bruce Leroy, show enough, battling for the total supremacy of of who's the greatest of Harlem. And it's such a ridiculous movie. It's got little Ernie Reyes Jr. in it, being like a little badass even at like 6. I fucking love this movie, and this is one of the ones when I was doing the cult classic screenings that I had the fortune to share with a bunch of people, a lot of people for the first time on the big screen. And me seeing this on the big screen, which was my first time as well, was kind of a majestic experience. I fucking love this movie. It's so absurd. Just the character of Shonuff in general is just so ridiculous, and it's got that fun like intro where he's sitting in a movie theater eating popcorn with chopsticks, and Shonuff and his goon squad come in and blaring music, and it just beats the shit out of a bunch of people in a movie theater. It's so stupid and fun. It's one of my favorite films. I could throw it in anytime and watch it and have a good time. I don't know if we've ever really talked at length about The Last Dragon, but I'm opening up that can of worms for you. So,
well, the first time I saw Last Dragon was at a drive-in as a double bill with fucking Beat Street.
Yes,
in 1985. Awesome.
That's an awesome double feature.
And at the time, I mean, 85? So, you know, I was like 13, 14, and it was one of the first. Actually, it wasn't one of the first. That's complete shit. Anyway, it's a great drive-in movie memory for me, seeing those two back to back, and they're very, very different films, I think. When it came out on VHS, I fucking ate that thing up. Like, I watched it so much because I was obsessed with fucking martial arts, and you know, I'm of that era where, you know, martial arts suddenly became a thing in the late 70s. Like, my childhood tracked with, you know, so I was, you know, Bruce Lee kind of opened the door, and we were everyone was kung fu fighting. I can confirm, and you know, there was no such thing as cultural appropriation. We all just fucking loved kung fu and all wanted to be Bruce Lee, and anything that even had one karate chop in it, even the reference in Jaws to karate chopping the fucking fence was cool because it was about fucking martial arts. So there was no such thing as a bad martial arts film. And this certainly fell into that. And I watched it time and time fucking again, and Get the Shine. And, you know, it really, really, really was, an obsession. And as everything was, you know, it was just another one of those ones that went in all the time. And then the music as well.
Yeah, man, the soundtrack fucking rules.
Yeah. Now, I say all this to say that, yes, there was a period of time where I absolutely fucking loved The Last Dragon. And then I didn't see it for maybe 25 years. And then
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I bought the DVD.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because this is worth it. Adam, my buddy Wayne wants to know if you're a Jim Cotta fan. Fucking
Oh
Jim
no, there
Cotta.
was.
That
It turns
movie
out
is
there was
so
a
bad.
line. It turns out there was a line. Jim Carter was definitely the line.
I also want to point out that if you're a gamer and you've ever played Resident Evil 4, I'd never seen Jim Cotta until a couple of years ago. Wayne, I actually watched it with Greg and Andy, so you'll appreciate that. But we all watched Jim Cotta one night because I'd never seen it, and I don't know if they'd seen it or remembered it, but we all watched it, and it is the same exact plot as Resident Evil 4. That movie makes no sense. It's about like a weird parasite and a bunch of villagers. I was like, did Resident Evil 4 rip off Jim Cotta? I was like, that is the weirdest thing to like rip a movie off about. But yeah, that movie's not good. Jim Cotta is pretty bad.
Well, I was going to say, like, when you're a kid, I think we've touched on this before. Like, when you're a kid, as long as there's one scene in a movie that's good, the movie's kind of good, and you'll watch it endlessly, and you don't kind of have that metric. Jim Cotta was one of the first films where I was like, that's not how cameras are meant to move. That's not what editing is. Like it was just really poorly made.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what poorly made was then. I just felt it in my bones. Like, this is a really bad fucking film. And it just felt shoddy and dodgy. And yeah, I watched it once on VHS and I have never gone back to it and never will. But as for Last Dragon, I got it on DVD in the late 90s after I hadn't watched it for at least 10, 12, 15 years. And I really struggled to get through it.
That makes me so sad.
And I haven't watched it since, but because it turned up in Sorry to Bother You in such a loving way.
Yeah, that was the
Sorry
best.
To Bother You fucking.
I fucking love that reference. Yeah.
That reference alone is enough that I do want to visit Last Dragon again and see how I feel about it, just to check again, because things go in ebbs and flows, and certainly with me, there's films I love, then hate, then love, then hate. Time, place, who you're watching a film with. There's so many things that influence how you respond to a film. And so I do actually want to go back and check out Last Dragon again because, I watched it, 50 times as a kid. Then I watched it once, in the 90s and went, no. And now I'm curious again. That said, I do own the soundtrack and I do still listen to the soundtracks.
The soundtrack's great, man. It's got some awesome cameos too, like fucking William H. Macy's in it. Yeah. Keisha Knight Pullum, the girl who played Rudy in the Cosby Show's in it. Like, there's all these like weird little like cameos in it, and it's just such a ridiculous, dumb, fun time. That movie, it's just an absurd movie. I love it.
It's also such a postcard to a time. Like, that's the one.
Yeah.
There's certain '80s movies that are like, Big Trouble in Little China, which Big Trouble in Little China is noticeably absent, for instance, from my list today. Yet we name check that fucking thing every other day. I mean, when we were doing our audio podcast, it was. Part of our intro was fucking Trouble, but it's not actually on this list today. But it's still, that's a film of its time, but it kind of is timeless in its way. Whereas this is so distinctly of a time and place, and the costuming and the dialogue and the music, and it's not even done. It's done in such a conscious way to be, let's aim at 11-year-olds right now today, and we don't care that tomorrow the world's going to be different.
Yeah.
And so it is such a postcard to my youth that I think my nostalgia as I get older is increasing, and I think that alone is probably going to make me like the film now a little more again.
It's as 80s as it gets, man. Like, that movie's so 80s. It's absolutely like a fucking time capsule. So I mean, that is my number one. Fucking The Last Dragon.
Chad Claflin, I totally agree. Robert Klaus is the fucking Western martial arts film director. There is no fucking doubt about that. Enter the Dragon, people. That I will talk about for days. That was actually going to go on my list, Enter the Dragon was one, but anyway, that's another show again, because obviously
we could have a whole Bruce Lee thing too, or a martial arts show, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I watch pretty much all. No, that's a lie. There's 3 Bruce Lee films that I really fucking like. Anyway, so yeah, Last Dragon, 1985.
Hi, Becky.
Doesn't surprise me. By the way, that was like totally predictable for me. But yeah, let's move on to the next film.
I'm gonna be lagging behind here.
That's okay, so am I. Okay.
I'll get there. Where am I at? There we go. I'm there. I'm on the same page with you. I've actually never seen this. So so this one's all you, my friend. I just one of those ones I've been meaning to see.
The original Magnificent Seven?
No, it's one of those ones I've been meaning to see. Actually, no, I think I tried watching this one. So I'm curious. No, dive in. You dive in, man. Go ahead.
Oh God, Magnificent Seven. God damn. Where do I start? I mean, obviously it's a remake of Seven Samurai. It's probably the first thing you kind of have to say with Magnificent Seven. This was a film that the first time I saw it, I was 7 or 8 anyway, and it was on TV, and my dad, who's a big Westerns fan, you know, dragged me and said, you know, come and check this out. And I think the thing with this film that first hit me so massively was the cast. I mean, I had no idea who the cast was. I don't think I'd ever seen a Steve McQueen film. I don't think I'd seen a Yul Brynner film. I don't think I'd seen a fucking Charlie Bronson film. I don't think I'd seen a fucking... I actually know I had seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., so I'd seen some Robert Vaughn, and he was The Man from U.N.C.L.E. But most of these guys who became lifelong fucking favorites, this was the film that introduced me to them. And so the fucking amount of just electric fucking charisma coming off the screen to a 7-year-old was phenomenal. This film is so perfectly fucking paced and set up and delivered, and it's a template that's so good that it's actually hard to appreciate just how good it does it, because everything rips it off. Any time you have an A-team film and you have a group of guys coming in, it's derivative of Seven Samurai / The Magnificent Seven. So there's so much about this that could almost feel stale if you didn't watch it then. But the thing that's astonishing is even now when you watch it, you just see how perfectly they fucking do it. You know, you have your setup where Eli Wallach turns up in a village with the farmers, acts like a turd, acts like a shithead. They're like, oh fuck, you know, we're a bunch of farmers. What the hell can we do? We have hoes and rakes. You know, let's go buy some guns. And, you know, everyone goes, we never know how to use fucking guns. What's a gun? You know, so they, well, let's go and do that anyway. And so they go to fucking town. As soon as they turn up in town, there's a guy getting buried on Boot Hill, as there's always a Boot fucking Hill in every single Western town. And it turns out there actually was a lot of Boot Hills in real life too. It wasn't just a cliche. Boot Hill was where you fucking buried everyone. And so, yeah, they're going to bury a Native American, and the whole town's racist, of course. And they're like, you know, we don't want to go up. There's a new element. Since we got, I mean, there's a great, I mean, this is the thing. This film is so fucking rich in themes and stuff. You know, literally the guy turns around and goes, when did this all happen? And the other guy goes, well, since we got civilized, there's a new element in town that doesn't want the Native American buried up the fucking top of the hill. And Yul Brynner, who's just turned up in town, turns around and goes, oh, fuck it. I'll drive the fucking wagon up. I'll drive the hearse up. I don't fucking give a shit. So he hops on the wagon. Steve McQueen's there, turns around, grabs a fucking shotgun off Buddy and goes, hey, can I use this for a second? Hops on the wagon. So you're like 10 minutes into the film and you're getting introduced to the first two badasses, and so are the farmers. And hops on the wagon, and the first thing that fucking happens is Steve McQueen starts fucking trying to steal the film from Yul Brynner. So he hops on the fucking wagon, grabs a fucking shotgun shell, shakes the shit out of it, then gets his hat, looks at where the fucking sun is, and puts it down. And as a kid, you know, you don't know what acting is or how that works. You're just suddenly like, what the fuck? This guy is so fucking cool. And then they hop on the hearse and they go up. And what's really cool then is, as a kid, you've immediately got this young kid who's going to be the outsider of the group, who's going to try and get in, who's the young kid who wants adventure and action and all the things that all us youthful people do. And he's walking up behind the fucking thing, and he's absolutely just in awe of how fucking cool these guys are, just going up the hill and willing to face this problem. And they're sitting there, and, you know, like, you know, Yul Brynner's got his cigar, and fucking, you know, guys at the window. I'm just walking through this scene because it's just an example of everything that makes a film fucking great. And there's a guy up in the fucking window, and Yul Brynner, you can tell his head hasn't even moved and stuff. And Steve McQueen's like looking around, and fucking he's like, second story window, and you'll bring a second story window, and fucking Steve McQueen goes, I'll wait till he sticks his head out. And as soon as the guy fucking shoots, you know, McQueen just turns around and fucking blows the window out like that, quick as fuck. And the guy who's following, the little kid who wants to be part of the gang, you know, almost trips over himself. It's like, it's made him weak in the knees how fucking badass that is. He's going up, and that's exactly how we, the audience, are feeling being introduced to these characters. And so they keep on fucking going up the hill and going up the hill and going up the hill. They're just, you know, doing their fucking cool thing, and they start talking, and they're talking cool, you know, like Yul Brynner's cigar is now shot out from the front, but he didn't even flinch, didn't even move, but the bullet hit it. And, you know, McQueen's like, hey, you know, are you elected? And he goes, no, I was nominated real good. And sort of annoyedly goes, oh, I had to waste a fucking cigar, grabs another cigar and puts it in his goddamn mouth. Then they go up the top of the hill, and the fucking assholes who don't want Native American buried at the top of the fucking hill come along. This is 1960, mind you, too. So this is like right at the birth of the civil rights movement and stuff. So there's a lot of subtext going on with this anyway. Fucking turns up at the top of the hill, you know, and fucking they, you know, the guys are there saying, roll back down, and Yul Brynner, you see his hand just fucking casually go beside his gun, but it's not there. And then as soon as they move, of course, he's bang, bang, bang. Doesn't kill any of them, just shoots two of their hands out just to show, you know, I'm that fucking good that do you really want to keep going? And then fucking Steve McQueen, casual as can be, kind of leans forward on his fucking own knee and just holds the fucking shotgun on him, smirking. And, and that's how you're introduced to the characters. And then, they drive down the hill and blah, blah, blah. They talk and, they kind of begin talking about how the West is ending, and they're like, we're obviously gunfighters who are badasses. And, that's kind of not what's needed anymore. Like, I could be a grocery store clerk, crackerjack grocery store clerk. And that's how it starts. And that's literally, in a nutshell, what's so fucking awesome about it. And everyone gets introduced that way in their own goddamn way. And what happened in real life was that as soon as everyone saw what Steve McQueen was trying to do to the picture, which was steal it, Charlie Bronson, James Coburn, and all those guys start having all these, because none of them have that much dialogue. There's not that much dialogue from a lot of the badasses in this film. So all of them can only use body language and sort of style and swagger to sell how relaxed they are in combat and how seasoned they are. We get introduced to Charlie Bronson, who's literally chopping wood in these big fucking logs, and he's chopping them in one fucking hit. And he's really doing it too. You can see that they're not actually prepped and already have splitting them, and he's hitting the crack. Like, he's literally just fucking lopping wood and it's just fucking going everywhere. And, he talks about being a badass and, hey, I was paid $800 for this job, $900 for this job. And, and Will Brenner and Steve McQueen are like, oh, it's $20 for this job. And, he's like, oh, right now, $20 is a lot. And you kind of, again, the economic exposition of what you learn about Charlie Bronson just in that scene is fucking amazing. And then James Coburn is almost a cartoon character. He's this skinny, lean, wiry fucking guy that, I can't remember I think it's Tex Avery, has this mental blank on what kind of creature it is. But he's a gunslinger that's always chewing a fucking toothpick, and he's kind of this thin, tall, yeah, lanky thing his shoulders are always super relaxed, and he's kind of got this really casual style. That's actually how James Coburn goes through this whole goddamn film. Just so fucking casual, and yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the fucking music. The score is just phenomenal. It's John Sturges directed it. John Sturges also did The Great Escape with a lot of the same cast, same writer as well. I don't know. I mean, how long do I tell you how much I love this film? But yeah, every single fucking member of the cast is great. They shine. It was one of the first films where I learned about, I didn't learn about it until later when I realized why do I love this film so much. And as I watched it hundreds and hundreds of times and studied every single blink of an eye or not blink of an eye, like there's so little blinking in this film. It's fucking gold. It makes me feel so fucking warm and fuzzy every time I goddamn watch it. And it's heroes that are heroes. And as I said, as a kid, it was the first film that kind of introduced me to the idea that being a gunfighter isn't a cool thing. It kind of sucks. Have this great scene again where the young kid is so fucking enthusiastic and, you guys are so fucking cool. You're great. And they're like, yeah, you have no fucking friends. There's a couple of barmen that know by your first name. It's a lonely life. And anytime you turn up in a fucking town and people know who you are, sooner or later, some asshole's going to try and kill you to prove who they are. It's like, it sucks balls. And it was the first film that kind of introduced all that to me. And the film ends with a great line of, we lost, the farmers always fucking, we always lose. Only the farmers won. And that's it's such a melancholy fucking downer ending. Like, you've seen this great act of heroism and, pretty much all of them fucking die trying to protect these fucking farmers who really are, just doing that. I don't know. I'll just stop now because I could talk about this film for the next 2 hours. I love the fucking
Jeremy
so much.
Jeremy wants to know if you've seen the sequels and are they predictably terrible?
They are. There is one of them. I always get the sequels mixed up. There is one of them, though, that has a couple of really cool fucking scenes. And it's not the one with Yul Brynner, if I recall, because Yul Brynner's in the first sequel, and then he's not anymore in there. I think, ironically, it's the one with fucking, complete mental, George Kennedy. It's the one with George Kennedy. And there's a scene where, like, the seven get caught, if I recall. Because I haven't seen the sequels in fucking many, many years. And your question has made me go, I'm going to watch all the fucking sequels when I go to this call. But they bury them all up to their necks and release all these fire ants on them. And, they have to try and escape. It's a fucking hardcore fucking scene, if I recall. But that's one that seared into my imagination. It was just really dark. But yeah, overall, no, the sequels aren't worth it. And the remake is, I mean, if I put a gun to my head, I mean, I'd certainly watch the sequels before I watch that goddamn fucking remake that came out the other year, because there's just nothing good about that film. Everyone's just fucking sleepwalking. Oh. Anyway, I won't it's a, you know, I mean, it's Bug's Life is a better remake of The Magnificent Seven than fucking that new one that came out. That's all I'll say on that. So I don't want to focus on the negative, just the positive. Yeah, Lee Van Cleef and Lauren Oates are in the sequels. I do vaguely remember that, but fucked if I can remember. These two comments from Jeremy and Chad have made it. So next time we have a chat, next time we're talking comfort food, I will spend 2 seconds to talk about the sequels because I'll go and watch all 3 or can't remember how many there are. There's a few.
Well, right on, man. Okay. Magnificent Seven. Let's see, what do we got here now?
Magnificent Seven is just fucking magnificent. It's
Hi-oh.
that simple. It is really that fucking simple.
Damn. All right. Fucking back still in 1985. Fucking Fright Night with goddamn Chris Sarandon. This is honestly, yeah, man. Like, this is one of my favorite vampire films, honestly. I feel like this one holds up more and more. I watch it every year. I give this one a watch every year around Halloween, and I like it more and more every time I watch it. It's just got so many different things going on. It's like it's serious where it needs to be. It's a comedy. It's a really good comedy. It's one of those really good horror comedies that you don't see done too well these days. And let's be honest, is there fucking anything dreamier than Chris Sarandon in this movie? I mean, let's fucking, if you're immune to his charms, like, then that's, I don't know. That's fucking ridiculous to me. Yeah, man, I fucking, I don't know. Like, the way they play up, like, the vampire element in this movie, like, he's just so, like, casually tough. And I love how, for a movie that's as goofy as it is, and like it has like some of the best casual tough in it, like where he's just like got Charlie by like the throat, and he's like fucking he's just like he's got like the window nailed down, and he's like, Charlie, come on, and he just like lifts it up with like one finger, and just like the whole thing comes up. They do a really great job with showcasing strength, and that's something that I feel like a lot of movies, especially back in the day, didn't handle very well. And this is one of those first movies that I remember as a kid seeing where it was like, oh wow, like you can actually tell that this thing is very strong. Even movies like the Terminator or Terminator 2, where you're supposed to be seeing this machine, but they also don't play off very well how strong it is or do a good job of showcasing how heavy it is until like things like the third one, oddly enough. But in this is one of those movies, like especially an early movie, where you get to see how like tough something is, and it's just like all these. He's got such a smug attitude throughout the whole movie, and just yeah. Now that I'm invited over, I might just swing by whenever I want, Charlie. And he's just fucking with him the whole movie. He's just fucking playing with his like fear and his like he's just messing with him the whole movie. And I goddamn love this movie. Chris fucking Sarandon, one of the greatest vampires of all time, in my personal opinion. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, what's really cool, I mean, firstly, I'm with you on this one, actually. Totally, 100% with you. I saw this one at the movies when it first came out, and I was, like, the way that this film has its feet in both decades of the 1950s and 40s and the 80s.
Yeah.
And kind of these two timelines that are going, not that it's running in two timelines, but it's so obviously influenced by the pastiche of the 40s and 50s horror element, which I loved as a kid. I mean, I love now, like, were my favorites. Again, I used to just watch matinees all the time, and all those old films were on. So by the time I'd seen this film, I'd seen most of the films that it was sort of, I won't even say, because that's the other thing, is it doesn't actually steal from anything. It homages a few things, but it doesn't fucking steal from anything. It has its own identity, its own personality the whole way through. It's totally aware of what it's doing at every single frame. It's one of those films where within 5 frames almost, you have total confidence that everyone in this film knows exactly what the fuck they're doing. And they know exactly that line they're going to tread between nostalgia and updating that nostalgia and looking through it through postmodern eyes. Like, it's very much a revisionist film for those 50s horror films. And one of those elements is that vampire element you're talking about, where I think the best example in the film is the seduction scene in the nightclub.
Yeah.
Where you'd always seen the idea that vampires are really fucking rapey and all they got to do is look at you and you're like, oh, swoon. But the way that film hypnotizes you as an audience, as Little Miss Married with Children is getting fucking pulled into his fucking technique that's been honed over hundreds of years effortlessly.
Yeah.
And the way that he's blending in with everything around him in that club, it's the perfect fucking environment and habitat for him to do what he does. There's just such a wisdom in everything about the way that scene's framed. And to me, that scene is the one that is a really great defining scene of why that film's fucking great.
Well, it takes things up a notch too, like especially the violence. Like, you know, you get the bouncer who comes up and he's like, "What are you doing, man?" And then he just fucking like just kills the guy like right there. And it just elevates things, and it doesn't have like then that's where it sort of takes things away from like the 50s element, where like the 50s, like the movies, that's what I think about the 80s in general. To me, like an 80s, the way I see the 80s were like almost like an imaginative revision of the 50s anyway. It had a lot of the same ideals.
Absolutely.
like the getting together.
Monster Squad and this Squad and this are doing the same exact fucking thing and doing it really well in both cases.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like the 80s in general to me, like it had a lot of the same things that the 50s did, where like kids hanging out at like soda joints and fucking going up to like make out points and partying. Like it was like a lot of the same things about the 50s, but like
we were even wearing our jeans folded up and wearing Converse, and you know, no, there was the 50s was as strong an influence as the 80s has been at the moment with the pastiche.
Yeah.
The only difference was now we're kind of self-aware enough to realize that we're pulling from the 80s, whereas when you were a kid growing up in the 80s, you didn't quite realize that everything you were doing was you didn't realize how you were being programmed by the boomers to love the 50s, which is interesting because the film that's going to come up for me is like the definition of everything we're talking about with that. But yeah, back to Fright Night. Like, it's really cool too that we got to see it on the big screen in 35mm at Somerville about 3 years ago.
Awesome.
That was fucking fantastic as a midnight movie, and it was really great to see it with a modern audience. But I'm going to hit on Roddy McDowall. Roddy McDowall is such a face of that era of the 50s and 60s and 70s, and such an iconic face. That
Peter
to
Vincent.
have him in it immediately gives the film a legitimacy with that element of it. And then at the same time, you've got such an 80s character in the sidekick. You know, hey, Brewster! You know, and as a kid, he was the one I wanted to be. That's how fucked up as a kid I was and who I idolized as a kid. He was my fucking hero in this film. And him fucking getting whacked. Like, I mean, there's going to be
that scene is like, oh sure, that scene is really like, that's a really grim scene too. Like that movie, that movie, that movie, like it's a great example of how the movie shifts gears so well, like tonally, and just like like you're never sure what it's going to do, but it always does it respectably. Like that scene is very, very dark. That's a really grim scene, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, once you sort of grow up, you don't get a shock by certain deaths. But the fact of killing the sidekick, you know, I think fucking Top Gun was the only other one I'd seen at the time that did that. So it really was genuinely shocking. And then to have him fucking so gruesomely killed was like, and to have him the character that I was most relating to, the character that, you know, I went around fucking imitating that goddamn laugh. Or I don't know, I think I maybe still have an element of that laugh in my laugh. Between that and Bruce Willis's fucking smirk and moonlighting. You know, those two things were part of my, again, that DNA element I was talking about at the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of the show. Like, and yeah, but Fright Night, and it's fantastically shot, fantastically written. There's a real wit and charm, and it's just so self-aware. As I said, there's a modulation of everything that never goes too far into the camp, but plays right on that edge of it so often. And then, as you said, can suddenly go, oh, and by the way, we can be savage and brutal because we are dealing with fucking bloodthirsty fucking vampires.
Yeah, and we're an R-rated horror film. Like, we're R-rated. Yeah. The special effects are awesome. And yeah, like I really do like the fucking the evil character, his sidekick there, Evil. And he was also great in. He played almost the same exact character in 976 Evil, which I don't know how you feel about that movie, but that movie's so much fucking fun. That movie's a lot of fun too. And he's great in that also.
Yeah. And you do realize he went on to make porn, right?
Oh yeah, of course. We can't not talk about the fact that he went on to become a porn star.
We need to say that a guy that had that much charisma, the only other actor in the film other than Roddy McDowall and Chris Sarandon as far as stealing scenes he was that good and had that much presence, and yet obviously I would love to know what happened in his private life. to know if he had just so much smoke blowing up his ass to start with that he was going to be great and then it went to his head, or if he kind of was so casual, I'm like, well, I can be a star anytime I want, so I'm not going to put in that. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea about his career or why he ended up that route.
I'm kind of curious, like that sort of reminds me of I watched that Scream Queen documentary that came out, the one about the main character from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and about him coming up through Hollywood gay, and then like the whole movie sort of being a play on being sort of like a gay horror movie, but it's like this really interesting documentary about his struggles with that throughout his entire career and how it sort of broke his career. And similarly, like the character in Fright Night, he went on to become a gay porn star. So I'm curious if like there is sort of a similarity to like the Hollywood, like weird Hollywood machine that just sort of brings you in. And like, I'm very curious about that. That's an interesting point. Well, but that documentary is pretty solid. You should check that one out. It's pretty fucking good.
I was going to mention, this is the first of many plugs I'm going to be doing because I'm plugging this shit. The Perth Revelation Film Festival is starting, and it's online this year because of the obvious reasons. A thing called Couched, and you'll find links. You know, I'm already talking about it on the Film Frak page and stuff. Scream Queen is one of the documentaries they're showing, so anyone in Australia or New Zealand is going to be able to actually see that documentary from July 9th to July 19, I think.
Nice.
Via that online festival, and I'm going to be checking it out.
Our buddy Tim Fife's in it. Tim Fife is in it. He's
Are you fucking with me?
No, Tim Fife is in it. Like our buddy Tim Fife, who does our credits, our theme song credits.
Fucking magnificent theme song. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Because now I'm definitely seeing it.
It's an interesting documentary. Yeah.
I'm way more excited for it now. I mean, they've got a Miloš Forman documentary, Forman versus Forman, that looks awesome, and Chabosky documentary that looks fucking awesome, and that Rise of the Synths doco.
Yeah, man.
And I'm only just rattling off the podcast. But anyway, back to front end. Yeah, Perth Revelation Film Festival, Couched. Type those keywords in. No, I think like 90% of the films are only Australian, New Zealand, but some of them are international. So there are some of the American listeners that are going to be able to actually tune into this thing. If you go on the Film Frak website right now, Film Frak Facebook page, you'll find a link anyway, and you'll find the catalog of everything they're showing, and there's loads of fucking great stuff.
I want to touch on. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was just going to say, back to Fright Night. I'm a thumbs up on Fright Night 2. I really, and Fright Night 2.
I'm not a fan of Fright Night 2. Yeah,
but I still like the sequel.
It's okay. Like I'd never seen it, but I just watched it for the first time a few years ago, and it was just sort of, it was like I think it was like maybe like a 3 out of 5. It's okay. Like it's not.
Well, it's a serviceable sequel. It's a serviceable sequel. If you watch Fright Night 1 and you want more Fright Night, that sequel is fun to stay in that world.
I think it lacks
reinventing the wheel or anything.
I think it lacks it doesn't have the villain in that one doesn't have the charisma of like Chris Sarandon. It's just kind of bland. So it's like it doesn't have and without that like roster, the complete roster of characters, I feel like it just kind of like Brewster himself as a character is, and that one's kind of funky. He's kind of a dick because he's got like the vampire experience, so he's kind of like cocky a little bit. But aside from that, like he alone just really isn't enough to keep that one interesting. I don't think. I mean, I thought it was okay.
I agree with you. I would agree with you with 3 out of 5. But again, the 80s had so many shitty sequels that were so bad they almost made you question if the original was good. And that was not one of them. Like I will happily watch Fright Night 2 after watching Fright Night 1. I would never go and watch Fright Night 2 on its own.
Yeah.
But if I watch Fright Night, I'm like, I want more of that. I'm gonna watch Fright Night 2.
Have you seen
which is probably about 50% of the time that I watch Fright Night, I'll watch Fright Night 2 with it.
Have you seen my buddy Wayne here is asking about if I'd seen You're So Cool, Brewster, which is a documentary on Fright Night. Have you seen that? I've never even heard of that, so I'm gonna look that up now.
Mission in life to find it.
I'm gonna check that out now, but I didn't know that existed. That sounds awesome.
Wow, yeah. Hopefully our guests will do what they did last week. You can go and find us a link, Wayne. Put that in there.
Yeah, find that in there, man. I want to watch that now. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to watch it like now. We'll just podcast now and go and watch fucking that. That might be our first cast. Remember, I was going to do some cast screenings where you and I just watch films together on each side of the world. Maybe that'll be the first one we do.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And just to wrap up Fright Night in general, the fucking remake You and I are both Colin Farrell fans, and that fucking remake is pretty goddamn bad. I'm not a fan of that remake, and I'm not someone who shits on remakes. I'm totally willing to give a remake a chance.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, it's just not. It reminded me of the Poltergeist remake, the one with Sam Rockwell, where it's just like it's just fucking flat. It's just a fucking flat line all the way through. There's like you can see Colin Farrell trying, but like there's nothing there for him to work with.
Yeah, I don't understand because I'm such a swoony Colin Farrell guy that I really it seemed to me like a no-brainer. There's nothing else. Colin Farrell would be able to carry the film for me and be like, well, if everything else fails, he's going to be great. And it kind of was just, no, flat is the word. Like,
It's nothing.
I'm never going to watch it again.
It's one of those movies where we talk about like it's like it fucking rides that line of mediocrity where it's just like so fucking in the middle that it has no pulse and like it's just a waste of time essentially. But it's not a waste of time is your next film, so let's get into that.
What is my next film? I'm so wrapped up in Fright now.
I've never even heard it. I've never even fucking heard of this, so I'm very curious to hear you.
Are you serious?
No, I've never even heard of this.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
So you and I, this is part of what I like about. Part of one of the things that you and I like, as you can see, like our lists are fucking so different, but like you and I are also like about a decade apart age-wise, and that is such a huge like. It's so huge as far as like movies and the way we grew, the things that we really latched onto coming up. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a really easy through line that I'll start this conversation with you about when I'm introducing you to Big Wednesday, and that through line is that Big Wednesday is written and directed by Mr. John Milius.
Oh, no shit.
This is a film he made before Conan the Barbarian and Red Dawn. He made it just after he wrote Apocalypse Now and Magnum Force. It's fucking John Milius. And John Milius, aside from being a gun nut fucking masochist, borderline fascist, but great fucking goddamn filmmaker who makes films with fucking giant fucking balls, was also an obsessive surfer and obsessed with the surfing community. This is not a man who wrote this film from afar trying to research surfing. He was a man who was already living this life, and he teamed up with I think it's Laird Hamilton's dad. Laird Hamilton's like one of the most famous big wave surfers in the world now, or what, he's a legend. But anyway, he teamed up with legit fucking surfers, and there are legit world champions all through this fucking film. This film is legit. This film is so fucking legit that the first time I saw this film was actually in social studies in year 7 at high school, because I grew up on the beach and I grew up at Newport, and this film was introduced to me by my social studies teacher, to us, as a study in learning about the tribalism of the surf community and about understanding the community that we actually lived in, because I lived in a small surf town. Every single character, even though this film is set in California and is obviously a very American film, I kind of saw all these characters in real life. This was the first film I ever saw where I was seeing something that wasn't totally fantastical, that was actually relatable to the world I was growing up in, that was relatable to the existence I was living. All these characters I saw every afternoon walking home from school, and the behaviors they had and the way they interacted and their priorities and all of that was so fucking strong. So to me, this film was like when you're a kid, art is very much your key to understanding the adult world with the things that the adults won't talk to you about, and trying to, and being exposed to ideas that unless you're talking to a philosophy professor and stuff, you're really not going to think about. You read lots of books, you listen to musical lyrics and analyze them, you watch, at least I did. A lot of my education of things I didn't even know existed was through film. And so this film was like a little secret puzzle piece that filled in a lot of things that I was seeing that I didn't understand.
Like
so
your
it had
attraction.
A very, very, very powerful fucking resonant effect on me as a child because
of your attraction to hunky Gary Busey there in the background. What is going on with Gary Busey being a young human being there? That's
Well, I mean,
interesting.
this was when Gary Busey was going to be one of the greatest actors ever to live. I mean, he'd just done the Buddy Holly story and been nominated for a fucking Oscar. Like I mean, Gary Busey was, before the fucking bike accident that gave him brain damage, Gary Busey was set up to be, I mean, he was a fucking force of nature on screen, an absolute fucking force of nature, a physical force. And I mean, in this film, he, again, like what I was talking about with the Magnificent Seven, with that physicality making up the dialogue, he doesn't have that many lines, though every line he has is memorable. But nearly any time he's in the frame, you're kind of looking at him. The funniest thing is the star of the film is William Catt, who went on to be the greatest American hero. And he is the guy who your eye so seldom is on unless he's the only one in the frame, because the other motherfucker that you're looking at there is Jan Michael goddamn Vincent. Now, Jan Michael Vincent, as a child, was possibly my favorite actor other than Steve McQueen. He was a fucking goddamn god. There is like 10 to 15 films that he did in the early 70s to early 80s that the amount of self-sabotage he did to his own career is astonishing and probably only matched by Mickey Rourke.
It's fucking tragic. Like, that guy's
so much
fucking
talent, so much screen presence, so much fucking charisma. And this is one of the films that you can point to go, that is what a movie star looks like. That is what someone who is young and full of energy and vibrancy and fucking passion and the ability to just hold the camera without any effort at all is what Jan Michael, there is just a casualness and a swag and everything. I mean, you know, obviously I still can't look at this film sensibly because of that childhood programming. That was my childhood programming. But I'm also now going to say that I watch this film like every fucking year. When I was living in America, anytime I was homesick, this was one of the films that I'd watch. Every time summer started in America, I would chuck on this film to get me in the summer mood. And in Australia, I do the same thing. Everywhere, as soon as the sun comes up and it's time to go into the water, this film goes on as one of the first films I fucking do to realign myself to that season and that idea. And obviously, as a kid, I wasn't analyzing this film on a filmmaking level. I understand that if you don't have this romanticism and this experience that I'm talking about with the film, I can understand how you would think this film might be boring. It's not paced, it's paced languidly. This film is paced in a way where you're just hanging out with these characters. It's paced in the same way that in a lot of ways Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Inherent Vice is paced. The difference is you don't even have the deeper mystery or the larger thing going on. What you have is a group of pals going through what is in some ways similar to a rock biopic, where you have these everyday dudes who just surf for a living and just love fucking surfing. Some of them have to go to Vietnam. There's a really strong fucking commentary about fucking the Vietnam War in this. I mean, it's a fucking John Milius film. So make no mistake, this is a political film. Make no mistake, this film is examining masculinity and examining fucking culture and examining, again, that word tribalism that I used at the beginning. That's what it's fucking all about, that. And it's really compelling the way it does it through these characters. And that this sense of unity, in the same way I say The Outsiders shows you how outsiders have to rely on each other. This film is all about fucking that and about friendship and how it's this unbroken fucking bond that no matter how stupid someone fucking acts, you're still going to be beside them. And all of that sort of shit. And it does drift into romanticizing that idea, but it's also got an authenticity, especially for the 70s. And the whole film is, just drifting in and out. And then one of them gets noticed as a great fucking surfer. And that's Jan Michael Vincent. And he pretty much has the same track he probably did in real life, where he just becomes a fucking alcoholic. Can't deal with having the pressure of expectations on him. Can't deal with the fact that he can't just go out and fucking surf anymore. That everyone's going to fucking watch him surf, and that, you know, and then it's no longer fun. It becomes a job. And the last thing he wants is a goddamn fucking job, because that's not what surfing is. And the whole thing builds to the giant showdown at the end, because in some ways it's a fucking Western. In some ways, I'm not the first person to pontificate on this. What it is John Milius is the Wild Bunch. The only difference is the big enemy at the end is the giant fucking goddamn winter swell, the biggest fucking waves that have ever hit the coast in like 20 years, the biggest storm in 20 years. And I'll tell you now, the size of those waves and the footage that they fucking get with the fucking professional surfers on those fucking waves, even now, you are seeing people risking their goddamn life for fucking cinema. These waves are fucking monsters. They are fucking 25, 30-foot fucking walls of death. And the way that Milius films them down low and the sound, like it was one of the first films where There was Star Wars with the mothership coming over, and there was the sound of the fucking waves coming in. These monsters, these natural fucking one, the sheer fucking spectacle of the last fucking 20 minutes of this film, as these friends that haven't even seen each other and have drifted away and started punching each other in the face and melted down, and they all hear about this swell from different places. They don't fucking call each other up, but they all turn up on the beach at the same fucking time and grab their fucking boards and start walking down the. And that's what you're looking at in the background there, is the three of them get together for the first time, remembering what they used to be like and what it was about, and none of them giving a fuck about anything apart from fucking going out and surfing and conquering and challenging these waves that none of them are fucking casual about. They all know that these waves can fucking kill them, and that all these guys are maybe just a little bit too old to be fucking doing what they're about to do. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps fucking talking about it. I mean, this is why I love the goddamn film. Like, it's, oh, yeah. I mean, I again, like Nangan Stone, I've just realized I've got carried away. Big Birthday, man. I mean, every time I fucking cry, like I'm almost crying just remembering it. Like, it gets me, man. It gets me every time. My fucking goddamn childhood. It's everything.
So this is your like your real life Point Break. Is that what this is? Like you just surfing, being Australian and surfing.
It's oh shit, it's so much more. I mean, Point Break's a good buzz, and it's a good adrenaline rush, and it's a well-made film, and I love it for different reasons. But this is far more personal. There's something really personal about this film. There's something really personal about this film. It's a shorthand me and my brothers still have. You know, yeah.
Is just out of curiosity. Just out of curiosity, since Gary Busey's in both this and Point Break, is there like any reference to that at all? To this movie in Point Break with Gary Busey? No. I wonder.
No, I mean only the intrinsic reference that we all know about if you watch both these films. Like when I first saw Point Break, all I could think about was this film, and this is what that character ended up being. But you got to remember, like the Gary Busey character in this film is the one that's like he's called Masochist. He's literally called Masochist, which in many ways is what his character is in Point Break too. He's called Masochist. I mean, there's a scene that defines his character, and the scene that defines his character more than any other is at a party when they're all fucking hammered, or like a good fucking service party, all getting out of hand and fucking, you know, Louis fucking playing in the background and they're fucking rocking and drinking. They get a basting brush, and they actually baste him down like a fucking chicken, and then he goes to crawl into a gas oven to cook himself. That's in the kitchen. Like he tries to fucking goddamn cook himself. The only reason he doesn't is because he can't fit in the oven. And when you think of that character and then think of what he turned about in Point Break, yeah, there's a through line. Yeah, it's like he became just a little bit more adult, but if you have a look at his actions in fucking Point Break, it's not that far removed from that dude. It's just that he knows that you probably shouldn't hop in an oven anymore, but he still thinks about those things. And then he goes, oh yeah, no, I don't do that anymore.
Well, my next choice for film is far less serious than I don't know if I'm going to get weepy-eyed over this, but
I mean, it's not a the thing with Big Wednesday is, I mean, it's a serious film and it's an emotional film, but it's nowhere near like what I responded to. It's the personal connection I have with it.
Oh, sure, no, I get that. You had a little
fucking goddamn magic,
nostalgia blast. But speaking of magic, oh my god, fucking KRULL people. Let's talk about KRULL for a minute. Can we talk about KRULL?
But just quickly, I'll just mention to Chad that if you notice the character's name in Apocalypse Now is the same fucking character name that's in Big Wednesday. Just an FYI. And yeah. Anyway, let's talk about fucking KRULL, because I'm all in for fucking KRULL.
KRULL's a weird one to describe. I feel like there's not a lot of people that know enough about KRULL to. Some people might know it exists. I feel like this is one of those movies that a lot of people really just haven't seen, honestly. KRULL is. Let me see. I'm trying to explain this the best I can. So excuse me, but KRULL is so much better than it has any right to be. KRULL's really, really, really well filmed. KRULL's got one of those. KRULL's one of those movies where, you know, you and I will talk about the marriage of like the score and like the visuals. This is one of those movies for me. KRULL has like such a magnificent adventurous soundtrack. KRULL is like just as much a swashbuckling film as it is like a sci-fi fantasy film. It's just as much a sci-fi film as it is a fantasy film, and being able to mesh those genres together is not really an easy task. but I feel like this is one of the, like, if this movie was made in any other era, like, it wouldn't have worked. Or even like a few years earlier, it wouldn't have worked. KRULL is very unique to the time it came out. It's like 1983. KRULL came out. It's got a fucking crazy cast. The cast is huge, including fucking Liam Neeson's in this. It's
Robbie Coltrane.
yeah, man. The cast in this movie is nuts. Who went on to be like fucking Hagrid. Hagrid shows up. Fucking god damn it, man. Like I'm trying to explain KRULL in like a way that like is gonna make sense to even me. When you talk about nostalgia, like even the poster of KRULL, which I have like an actual fucking movie, a theatrical release poster of KRULL hanging on my wall as we speak. There's certain like visual elements of KRULL. Like there's certain shots in a movie that'll just like instantly make me like nostalgic and give me like a weird feeling that you can't adequately describe. KRULL is filled with so many of those shots for me. Some of the shots in the bog, like where they're chased by the fucking those awful. There's the best scream, like one of the best screams a monster makes outside of fucking Invasion of the Body Snatchers is the monsters in this have such a cool scream when you kill them. But that whole scene in the bog, some of like the sunset shots in this are amazing, and like the whole like Widow of the Web sequence with the stop motion animation. There's so much cool shit going on in this movie, and the main character, Ken Marshall, the actor, he never really went on to do anything else. This is such a weird. KRULL is such a weird time capsule.
He did Space Hunter, if I recall.
I believe he did.
Space
Yeah.
Hunter 3D.
Yeah, he didn't do a lot though. Like he didn't do too many things.
He didn't. I was just trying to think of the other film that I immediately associate him with, and that's the one I think.
Yeah, and the fucking the director of this didn't do too many things. He did one of your favorite films. He did fucking Bullet.
Yeah, what do you mean he didn't do too many things? There's Peter goddamn Yates. Peter Yates did Breaking Away, which is one of the greatest coming of age stories ever in the 70s. He did The Hot Rock, which is for my money one of the best heist films with Robert Redford, and it's written by fucking William Goldman. And he did Bullet, which is arguably the greatest fucking film.
You love you some Bullet. We know that.
I mean, I love me some Peter Yates. Peter Yates is a great he was this great journeyman director, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. He was able to shift genre. He made a great heist film. He made a great coming of age film. He made a great fucking cop film. I mean, it was the first thing I was going to hit on when I started talking about this film, was that it's Peter fucking goddamn Yates, a truly fucking great director, and that's why this film fucking works, because you got a master who's had 25 odd years to hone his craft and knows exactly how cinema works. And so many of the things that would come off as goofy are actually working because he knows how to fucking do cinema.
Yeah, it's very well. That's what like this. There's such a god damn it, man. KRULL is it's so hard to talk about.
Friends of Goddamn Eddie Coyle is one of the best fucking, just one of the best movies ever fucking made with Robert Mitchum. Like it's amazing. It's from the same guy that wrote Killing Them Softly, like as in the original novel.
Oh, really? No shit.
Yeah. And it's a Boston set fucking gangster film where, Robert Mitchum's over the hill and Peter Boyle. Anyway, Friends of Eddie Coyle could easily have been on this list because that film fucking rocks too. Peter Yates is fucking great. He's not a flash in the pan. Fucking no, he's a great fucking director.
I just meant like as far as like after this, he didn't have many things after this. Same as like Ken Marshall. There wasn't many things. Like this seems to be like one of those movies that sort of just ended people's careers in some cases and then fucking made other people.
It was a massive
it was
flop,
a huge
and it was
flop.
fucking crucified in the reviews.
I don't feel like I'm adequately like selling my love for KRULL very well. It's really hard to describe KRULL unless you fucking. It's such a like D&D like I'm trying to like explain it in a way that like makes sense. It's so many like of the fantasy elements that I just love and that are super personal to me, and they get me all like fucking nerd gooey inside. And just like the fact that you have, it's the only well-made fantasy swashbuckling sci-fi film I can think of. Like I can't think of anything that mixes so many different genres outside of Dungeons and Dragons that actually does it well. Fucking Ice Pirates is a good example as well. Yeah, Ice Pirates is a really good example. Yeah, this is.
I mean, both these films. I mean, it's a very niche film, and I understand. Like a lot of people still consider it a terrible fucking film, KRULL, even within the fantasy realm. It's a trashy thing. I see it more like you did. I was I was 11 or 12 years old and I saw this at the movies and my grandmother took me to see it. And the whole reason we went to see it was because it was the hero's journey. Like at its heart, KRULL is the hero's journey. It's the same as fucking Star Wars. Yeah. It's the same as all of those things. Young guy who doesn't, oh, excuse me, who doesn't have any idea about his potential, gets a cool fucking weapon instead of a lightsaber, it's the gavel, which is, I mean, every single fucking kid who saw this film wanted that goddamn fucking weapon.
Oh, the glaive, yeah.
The fact that you have to wait like so long in the movie for that weapon to be used is really good pay, because a lesser film would have used it early and kept on using it.
Yeah.
But they make it fucking special. They make that weapon fucking special, and that's one of the keys to why this film's so great. But as an 11 or 12-year-old seeing this on the big screen, that screaming in the bog that you're talking about, scared the living fucking shit out of me. I really hadn't been exposed to much horror. I hadn't been exposed, you know, I'd seen Psycho and a few others, which had rattled my cage. But that fucking scream gave me nightmares like the Dark Crystal fucking Skeksis did. Like that scream, the Skeksis and Flying Goddamn Monkeys and Wizard of Oz were the three indelible memories I have from my childhood that fucking really shook me up and challenged me.
That's such a good scream. Like, it's like
horrendous, but
it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, like they fucking come out of the head and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I hadn't seen much gore either because you know my parents didn't let me watch R-rated films or even M-rated films. I was only allowed, and this one was NRC, not recommended for children. But not recommended for children was 11 to 12 years old, so I was allowed to see it. But that gore effect of the brains coming out, and fucking going into the sand like that, was one of the first times that I'd ever actually seen real gore. So that fucking really shook me up too. And there's two ways to view this film for me. And it's definitely one that, like, the nostalgia factor of what it was like when I was a kid. And I loved it. And, you know, I ate up, again, I had no metric for what a good film or a bad film was. It was just films I fucking liked. And this film had so many scenes, you know, a film didn't have to be paced right or didn't have to flow. But a film like this had at least 20 fucking memorable scenes in it.
Oh, yeah, man. The fucking Cyclops, the Cyclops is great. The goofy magician who's almost like kind of a goofy Disney character where he's just like so silly, but he's still like a badass when he needs to be and manages to get things done. Like every single character is awesome. Like the bandit squad they're all fucking cool. And there's such like the music's like very adventurous and it's just really like keeps things going, and the bad guy like in his castle that is never in the same place just so you can never find him and they have to go to like the Oracle to find out where he is. And like the whole thing with the Widow of the Web and the story between her and the guy who was with them, and like it's the way they make it a
chase. The way they make it a chase film is responsible for the reason that it keeps heading at a pace towards a destination.
Yeah.
By that simple conceit of the fact you've got a castle that's moving and you've always got to find it within a certain amount of time. It's like constantly having a ticking time bomb. And it's a really clever fucking conceit to construct a film around that idea alone, because you've always got something that you've always got a goal. Watching this as an adult though, and I still enjoy it as an adult, but I can see the cracks a lot clearer. There are a lot of flaws in this film. But the thing that leaves me in awe is what you were talking about before, like the matte paintings. Like some of those mattes of the fucking sunsets and the matte paintings of some of the matte work, the practical effects, like just the sheer artistry of the visual effects are of such a high fucking standard for that era that it doesn't take much even now to switch your brain off to not judging them through modern eyes and just go, wow, this is 1980 fucking what? 1983?
83, 83? 83,
you know, like, it really, and I think that, I think that if you watched it now for the first time as an adult, you probably wouldn't connect with it. But if you've got kids and they like the heroes, if they like myths, if they like the mythology genre of the Lord of the Rings and fucking Star Wars and, you know, Willow and fucking, you know, this belongs in that fucking conversation with no worries whatsoever. And I think, you know, especially if you introduce like a kid from 10 to 12 years old, this is like a fucking sweet spot, but I reckon you'd have to be swept away with it.
I'm hanging out with my niece tomorrow, so I think I'm going to introduce her to KRULL. I'm going to see if she likes it, and if she doesn't, I'll just disown her from my life. But I want to point out that fucking Chad fucking said Ice Pirates rocks, and then he said he will hella defend Yor, the Hunter from the Future, which is such a terrible movie. Yor is so bad. Yor is like...
I actually can't watch it anymore.
Yor is like one of those like You're is like one of those movies that I would like throw on at like midnight just to see a pair of titties in. Like one of those like bad fantasy movies. Like yours is like my equivalent of like the slasher kick I've been on. It's like the fantasy equivalent of the slasher kick I've been on, where it's just like you throw it on just to watch some boobs and some fucking terrible, terrible violence. Those movies are fucking your.
I'll tell you what's fun is that we don't have to look at these films through a critical eye. Like
no, not at all.
It has some flaws because this is all about loving cinema right now. This is all about just embracing the fucking love for it and trying not to be too negative. And then,
no, not at all.
There's a couple of films you're gonna test me on that with not being negative, but this one is definitely not one of those films. I mean, I'm all in for KRULL too.
KRULL's beautiful, man. I love KRULL. Oh, fucking, I used to love Beastmaster as a kid. I used to love it, and I tried watching it again, and it didn't hold up for me, which made me sad. Tanya Roberts, still great, but Beastmaster as a whole, it did not hold up for me, which made me sad.
I still enjoy it. Yeah. I still enjoy it for what it is, which is, you know, it's a really cool idea, not done as well as it could have because of the limitations of time. But
yeah,
there's also, I mean, for me, it's just, it does have that level of debauchery. You know,
a movie's PG. A movie's only rated PG too, and it's like
and the gore in it, like you know, it's quite gory. It's got some really fucking adult ideas in it, you know. And I like, you know, the reason that Conan the Barbarian is the best of those films is purely because of that excess.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is merely just going to fucking town. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, sure. Let's dive into your next film, good sir.
Oh God, okay. This is another one I'm probably you're gonna have to reel me in. We talked about categories for things and how we culled things for this list of comfort food. And there's some really clear films. There's three films that I can point to three films that dictated why I feel about movies that I do now. And it was Star Wars in 1977, which is the big one. And you'll notice that's not on the list because how could I even begin to talk about Star Wars? And I feel it was pointless to include that on this list. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Superman the movie. I was at just the right fucking age, at just the right time to be completely all in with this goddamn fucking movie. And I mean, there's a thing called movie magic that sometimes gets tossed around really liberally. There was Star Wars, this and Raiders did that fairy dust thing on me as a kid where I wasn't even willing to accept the fact I was watching something fictional or something make-believe or that I wasn't watching something real. And part of that came down to I was 7 or 8 years old. I obviously knew who Superman was. I'd read a couple of the comics. I liked Superman. I mean, how could you not like the most powerful guy of all guys? You know, the most powerful, you know, one of the reasons why I'm not really into superpowers that much is because, you know, Superman has them all. And, you know, it's like, he's kind of like, let's just roll them all into one and there you go. He's called Superman for a reason. And the other reason is because of this movie. This movie changed my goddamn life. I saw it the second day it was released. My mum, my dad, and my uncle took me and my brother and sister to see it. And the one thing that's the distinct memory straight away is that they gave me glow-in-the-dark kryptonite as you're walking. Because this was back in the day when you turn up to a film, you got a little program, which was a little book that explained the making of the film and had shots of the film. And they sometimes gave you a little fucking present. And I got a glow-in-the-dark fucking kryptonite that went onto a little leather strap that went around my necklace. And I wore that thing for maybe 3-4 years. And it was big and bulky and impractical, but I wore that fucking thing. Superman the movie, I mean, it's still to me, in the straight ahead superhero flicks where you're just trying to make people feel good and fucking be swept up, like what the Disney Marvel films try to do, nothing has come close to the magic that this film fucking weaves for that. And the whole thing was, you know, the poster was, you know, you will believe a man can fly. And the way that they do that, setting it in the real world, and it was, you know, I hadn't been to New York City, but I certainly hadn't been to Metropolis either. But the first step was having so much contemporary stuff there. Like they were really smart in not making it set in the 50s or the 30s or the 40s or the eras that everyone had associated Superman the movie with, but updating it so that the parents could enjoy the film and kids could too, that whole secret. And then you got Richard Donner. Richard Donner is just a great fucking goddamn filmmaker, and that's all there is to it. You know, The Omen, this. I mean, I'm not going to. I mean, the reason Lost Boys is great isn't Joel Schumacher, and you know, rest his soul. It's Richard Donner's fingerprints are all over that fucking goddamn thing. Donner just really took care to never wink at the audience in a way that pulled you out of the film and to just convince you. And the first thing he does with this film, that the older I get, and this is a film I watch maybe once, twice a year, every goddamn year. I watch it as much as I do Raiders or Star Wars, is that he takes his time to set up a human being and a character. And watching the Smallville sequence of this film, knowing as a 7 or 8 year old, I know I've got into a Superman film. Making 7 or 8 year old me wait an hour and 5 to 10 odd minutes before I'm going to see Superman did not bore me, because I wanted to know the prequel story. I wanted to know how Superman was made and where his programming comes from. And the way that this film focuses on that small town innocence and purity and the ideals of, having Glenn Ford, which again, I didn't know Glenn Ford really from a couple of Westerns, that was it. But to know, Glenn Ford was just this everyman, wonderful guy. And having him as Pa Kent is such an important factor in why this film works. But having that programming of Superman and spending that time with him as a child, learning who he is and saying out loud some of the things that really hadn't come through for me in the comic as a kid. Again, that whole idea of, as a bird showing off when it flies, how come I can't just go out and win every fucking race? How come I can't just go and do what I can do? How come I can't be fucking great and wonderful? And, his dad's like, yeah, what, you want to just fucking kick a football? What, it's just a fucking game. Like, don't waste your time doing that shit. You're here for a reason. You're here for something fucking special. And that restraint that he has to use as a kid when he's getting aware of what he can do. And the idea of that, obviously, later in, as I watched this film, as I grew up, obviously that became a giant fucking allegory for puberty and for, awakening of everything. And, suddenly having the strength to be able to run faster. And, as you get older and bigger, all those things come in. And the way that film does that is so fucking good. And the way that it builds anticipation of that is so fucking amazing that by the time he finally, because you get teased first. That's what's really great. He goes through that thing. He goes, look, I've got to go searching. I've got to find out who the fuck I am. I've got to go walk the earth and, go to my fortress of solitude. And the way that it then teases you and it hits that iconic score for the first time. And that score, John Williams' score for fucking Superman the movie is just as good as Star Wars or Indiana Jones. But it's the one that probably is the most personal to me. It's the one that gives me the most goosebumps. Like, I respond to Star Wars in a trigger of, I'm watching Star Wars. And Indiana Jones, that gives me a sense of adventure. But there's something really emotional about the Superman score and the way that fucking builds to me. And
it's a really good score.
It's got that personal element.
It's that John Williams score. Like, I'm personally not a fan of this movie, but like the score in this film is, I think it's one of John Williams' most original and best scores. And he's made so many fucking great scores, but like the Superman score is among my favorites of his. It's fucking really good. The theme song is so fucking good.
Yeah, and the way it teases you, because you get the opening credits with dum dum.
Yeah.
Those opening credits are so fucking well designed. But then you really don't get that score again until he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, hangs out with Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando kind of tells him stuff that blew my fucking tits as a kid, about the universe and, how it all works and who he can be, and the idea that, humans can be fucking good. They just need the right fucking symbol and all of that fucking stuff that justifies having him as a Boy Scout. Like, they justify him being this better man than all of us so fucking well, where he just doesn't have a flaw other than a naivety to how nasty people can actually be. Because there's a couple of scenes in it where he's genuinely surprised at how fucking turdy people are. But that speech that Marlon Brando has is so fucking amazing as he goes off across the universe and learns about everything. But then, yeah, this is the first time you get a hint of the score, and it's sort of, but it just hits a crescendo, and it's just and he flies, and the fucking mask comes out, and he flies around. It's the first time you've seen him fly, and he just does it once. And the sequence of him in his uniform and flying lasts maybe 10, 15 seconds, and that's it. And then crash cut to a horn honking, and you're in New York City. So until that point in the film, you've been back in Smallville, in this tiny little town that could be anywhere at any time. There's something timeless about it, like small towns are still that way. And then suddenly crash cut to fucking the modern world. And all these noises and all this sensory input and all this overwhelming stuff that you've been made clear too that even though he's Superman, this is all foreign to him. Not only is he an alien on Earth, but he's alien. He's an alien to the fucking city, and to the biggest city in the fucking world, Metropolis / New York City. And the way that it doesn't try to mask the fact that it's New York City and just go, well, this is the way we're going to deal with that, is really incredible. And so then you have him being introduced to the city and him playing into the pastiche of Clark Kent. And you know, that's the first time you really meet the Clark Kent that you know too. And you know, but you've spent enough time with him as Clark to know that's actually not who he is at all. It's very clear that this is an act he puts on. And that's ingenious in its own way. But when you finally get the first sighting of him doing super feats, the first thing that you get is Lois in the chopper up on top, something happening. You hear her scream. You see him look up. The first thing that happens is you hear boom, boom. And that first music cue comes in. I'm getting goosebumps telling this again because this scene is perfectly fucking constructed. You've waited so long for this, and it's going to have to be something pretty fucking good to live up to the expectation of what you've been waiting for. And so you get the dum dum. He looks up, he looks down. And then it's silent. And the music doesn't continue, it just beats. And then it waits about 3 or 4 seconds and it beats again. And in that time, he's looking around. And he's fucking looking. And then he's realizing, okay, this is an emergency. And he starts fucking running. And he's running, trying not to, still trying to blend in. He's still trying to be his fucking dude. He runs, and the first thing he does is this great nod to all the adults that had grown up with Superman and watched the fucking George Reeves TV show. He runs past a phone booth and he looks it up and down. He stops, he pauses, and he looks it up and down. He's like, yeah, that's fucking silly. That wouldn't happen in the real world. In the real world, Superman could not fucking change that. And then he moves on. So you're immediately getting this contextualization. That as a kid, obviously, I didn't really realize, even though I'd watched a lot of the George Reeves show, I didn't realize what they were doing, but I just knew they were doing it well. And so it builds up. And then the music again, dum, dum. And it's almost like this heartbeat that's kind of just in the background as he fucking is finally about to become what you've been waiting for him to become. And then he changes and comes out in the costume. And the way he just walks up and this fucking dude goes, looks at him in the costume, looks him up and down like the fucking thing, goes, hey, Jim, whoa. Again, acknowledging that in the real world, a guy in this outfit is going to fucking stand out. And so you're just constantly making sure that the audience is aware, like we're in the fucking real world and this is what people would really do if this guy came out. And then you hear the scream and he snaps right out of all that shit and just goes into fucking hero mode. And that's when he finally takes off and flies. And just as he does, the fucking chopper starts falling down. He's flying, it's coming down, he's flying, it's coming down. And the cutting, the editing of this fucking sequence is so fucking magnificent. And the sound, because you've got this sound to give this helicopter velocity, like it's kind of going woo, 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 woo. As it's falling down, the air is catching because it's so close to the building. And because the building's there, the composition allows you to see how fucking fast it's going. And because he is so fucking awesome, that straight away, again, when he catches the helicopter, he doesn't catch it with 2 hands, he catches it with one goddamn hand straight away. Like, and he's not even showing off. He's not even showing off catching it with 1 hand. That's just instinctively what a man this strong and fucking powerful can do. And then he starts flying. And then again, just to beat you over the head with the fact this is the real world, the first thing he says to Lois is, don't worry, I've got you. And Lois turns around and goes, you got me, who's got you? Fucking phenomenal. And that, I mean, again, just like Magnificent, I could go through beat for beat of why things are good, but that is how you introduce a fucking goddamn superhero and how you make the audience earn the wait and then pay it off. And then the first thing he does after he flies away, just to end this little sequence, is that he starts having fun. He starts flying and having fun. He starts barrel rolling. He gets a grin, realizing just what he can fucking do. And that finally, after all these years of not being able to beat, the guy that kicks the football, not being able to run, that he can just do this fucking thing that's so much better and so much more magical. And he just has fun fucking flying. And, and then the first thing he does to bring it back to earth again and have a nice little joke is then he saves the cat in a tree, which is just such a wonderful comedic touch for the adults. But as a kid, tells me that there's no job too small for Superman. Even though Superman could fucking rescue the world from a nuclear weapon later or whatever, he will also save a cat from the fucking tree because that's the kind of good guy he fucking is. Whoever screams and goes, help, that's what he's going to fucking do. And yeah, and I haven't even touched on how good Gene Hackman is in this film as Lex Luthor, which is just the template for every other fucking Lex Luthor that's followed. Even though everyone has their own eccentricities, every single one, Gene Hackman playing it so high camp and so comic booky in this real world, but doing it in a way where it's actually bleeding into the eccentricity of his egotistical fucking genius that he believes in himself. Is and Ned Beatty, like it's it's amazing that tiny little brain can generate enough energy to fucking move those little legs. So many good fucking lines. And the one that I use still to this day is the whole, one person can read War and Peace and come away thinking it's a simple adventure novel, and another man can read the ingredients to a chewing gum wrapper and come away with the secrets of the universe. It's so many fucking great lines in this film. The script is so fucking dynamite. And then I haven't even mentioned like Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. There's such a great balance between self-reliance, self-resilience, strong fucking 70s feminist female character and swooning over fucking Superman, but always trying her best to be a professional even when she has to talk to him and so I cry, I laugh, I get swept up in this thing every time. I can't even be objective about this film anymore. There was a time where I really analyzed it and looked at it and tried to pick it apart. But I'm incapable of doing that because Christopher Reeve, I can't even believe I haven't mentioned that Christopher Reeve is Superman. Like, it's really that simple. Really that simple that even when he was in a wheelchair, if they suddenly reported that, oh, by the way, he's not, he's flying around now, and, that wasn't actually an act, I'd be like, even as a fully grown adult, I'd be like, fair enough. That doesn't surprise, I'm not shocked. I'm more shocked at finding out, this guy's an arsehole than I am at finding out, I did. This film is the perfect superhero machine for everything that a family superhero film should be. It's flawless on that metric, and no matter how often films try to chase that feel-good, hero is better than us thing, I don't think any of them are anywhere near as well engineered. Even Captain America, the new Captain Americas, don't do it as well as what this film does it. Because anytime they do, they're just borrowing from this film anyway, and in a way that's not really advancing what this film did, just retreading what it did anyway. So yeah, it's perfection. It's absolute fucking superhero perfection. It might be my favorite. It's my favorite superhero film. It's not the best superhero film though, because I prefer the ones that obviously subvert and put it more into the real world in a different way. But yeah, this film is just, as I said, it's comfort food to the highest degree. There's not one edit, sound beat, anything that I don't know off by heart that doesn't feel like family to me.
Well, fucking all right. I don't have anything to contribute to that because, like you said, you don't want to keep things negative in the show, and you just spouted off a love letter to Superman.
I don't want to, but I also want your feedback. Like, what doesn't work for you in the film?
It's just, I think it's corny as hell. I think it's fucking super corny. The effects are bad. They don't hold up. The lines. I think it's a very, very corny film. I think it's the first fucking Superman film, and they're trying to figure it out, and like I can't. It's just not for me. Like, it's just really not for me. If anything, I might have a minor appreciation for it because I'm a fan of Superman Returns. I think Superman Returns was solid, and I think Superman Returns is only as solid a film as it is because of this film. Sort of like the way Logan is as solid a fucking Wolverine movie as is because of the movies that were before it. Even though they might not be my cup of tea, the fact that those movies exist and it gives like something of a history makes it that much more grandiose. And I like the use of the original score in the newer one. I don't know. I think the newer one was a pretty underrated film myself, but I'm not going to defend that one to the fucking death either, because I'm not going to Superman's just not my favorite character in general. I'm not the biggest Superman fan. So I just appreciated the new one. And I like the fact that the newer one was a continuation rather than a reboot of the story. I like the fact that it touched off with like the old ones, and I think that was cool, and I really like how they did that. I feel like it's hard to make a good Superman film, honestly. I feel like that's one of the I think they haven't, aside from the animated stuff, a lot of the animated stuff they do is really well done, and I think that's as close as you can get. But Yeah,
I mean,
I think
let's be clear. The DC animated films are better than any live-action comic book film. Marvel, DC, any brand, anyone. The DC animated films are just the fucking best.
yeah.
If you're looking for the purity of what the comic books are trying to do and looking at it being advanced, or if you're looking at it just perfectly encapsulated, Batman: Mask of the Phantasm is just fucking perfection.
Yeah, that movie's great.
And I'll see that. Like, I'll see that the DC animated films, but I'll say they're better. The DC animated films are better than any of the Marvel films, any of the DC films, any of those. As far as just pure comic book fucking films go, the DC animated films are the best, and they somehow manage to still just be the best, which is astonishing, because I keep on tuning into them going, okay, well, this one's not going to be, I mean, there's some that are better than others, but they're all fucking perfect. Because Superman 3 and 4 are so fucking bad, to the point of borderline, well, not even borderline, they're both painful to fucking watch. You have Superman 1 and 2, which go together so seamlessly that, I don't think, the only time I saw Superman the movie without Superman 2 was when it first came in the movies. Because when Superman 2 came out of the movies, the opening day, they played it with Superman the movie. So the first time I saw Superman 2, I saw it with Superman 1 at the movies. And I saw it maybe, 15, 20 times at the movies. And I saw them back to back. And so I always watched them back to back anyway. Superman Returns is the trilogy ender that we always needed for this. And it erases 3 and 4 for me completely, which is wonderful. It has huge flaws, and Superman Returns is nowhere near as good as these first two. And I'm willing to discuss the fact that Superman 2 is better than Superman 1. I don't believe that myself, but it's also comes down to purely subjectivity, because they're both fucking great films. But
it's also hard for me to argue with you about this, because you just spoke so passionately about Superman. And the next film I'm going to talk about is nowhere near any sort of the caliber fucking passionate discussion I can have that you just had. So it's a completely fucking throwaway argument. So I'm not gonna rain on your parade because I'm about to talk about.
No, I didn't want to argue. I was just curious where the alternate turn. Yeah, it's funny that for me the effects stand up fucking, amazingly. In some ways much better than a lot of the CG effects.
What's funny is Brian here just said that Brightburn is the best Superman movie, and honestly, I would agree with that. Brightburn, I think I enjoyed Brightburn way more than I thought I would. It didn't do any more than it needed to do, and what it did very well.
I enjoyed the first 2 acts of Brightburn a fucking lot, but that third act totally takes all the air out of it. Like the complete opposite of what I was talking about Superman, where you anticipate something and then you wait for it, and then when it happens, it's even better. It was a complete opposite with Brightburn. Once it actually gets into that third act, it just loses its footing so many goddamn times.
I really like that. I like that third act a lot. I liked the fact that it had the balls to go with the follow through to what it set up, and I like the fact that it went. Not only did it have the balls to do it, it did it in a way that I didn't see coming, and where the end, when the final payoff happens at the end, I didn't see that coming, and I was just kind of like, oh shit. I was like, that's very grim and very awesome.
I didn't see the end credit stinger coming. The end credit stinger was what I didn't see coming, but I certainly saw it was telegraphing everything. But I did, don't get me wrong, I liked Brightburn. I'm a fan of Brightburn. I'm just saying that for me, it was a failed potential. It could have been a great film. It's a good film. And it all comes down to that. The setup for that film is way better than the payoff. But I do like that, I do, by the same token, like moments in that third act. I agree. I do like that it goes dark. Yeah. And it goes grim in the way, and it follows through on some of its promises, but it just so predictably follows through on those promises to the point where it kind of contradicts itself to follow through on them instead of being seamlessly doing it. I don't want to get into spoilers with that one because it's a much more new film.
Yeah.
But I like Brightburn. I consider myself a fan of it, just not a.
Yeah, I would recommend Brightburn. Yeah, check out Brightburn.
It's a solid 3 out of 5 film for me.
Yeah, and as much as you talk about,
could have been a 4 out of 5 in the right hands.
Yeah, 3. I would say it's a 3 out of 5 as well, and I agree. I totally agree with everything you're saying. And Chad was talking about
Overlord.
You talked about Overlord fucking rules. You talk about Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, and as much as I love that one, I think Red Hood. I like Red Hood and Return of the Joker much better myself. I think Return of the Joker might actually be my favorite animated Batman movie. That movie's Mark Hamill just having so much fun with it. So good, that one.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that for the simple reason, and I agree. Red Hood is fucking magnificent as well, and I can't argue with that for one very simple reason. Batman: Mask of the Phantasm is all about nostalgia, like what Superman the movie is. and not the nostalgia of the fact I was a kid when I saw it. I just mean it's playing into that 50s style Batman and the retro Art Deco fucking look and
the animated series
like that, and it looks the way that Batman should as a kid. Whereas Red Hood and fucking Return of the Joker are very much they're taking it further and into new territory, and they do it just as well as what Mask of the Phantasm does.
Yeah, the Batman the animated series for me is like the quintessential Batman, if I'm gonna be honest. I think that is like the best iteration, personally. But
I'm totally down with Chad. The Flash of Superman shorts are so fucking good. I still watch it. I mean, I've got that like 10, 20, fucking, I don't know how many discs, the DVD box set I have with all the films, and every single film's like 2 or 3 discs, but it has like a load of the Fleischer films, and it also has on like Superman and the Mole Man on it and a load of the old things. Fucking great with the George Reeves movie. Like, but yeah, I'm with you. The Fleischer fucking ones are just pure fucking gold.
All right, man. Let's fucking keep this gravy train rolling.
Yeah, I'm trying not to get swept up in talking about these films I love, but I mean that's the point, right? We're not talking about things we like.
I mean, don't worry. I'm gonna have
things that cure our soul. If I get,
I'll talk about this for 4 minutes, and then you can have a fucking a class again on whatever you're gonna talk about next. So up next, I have the 1993 film Airborne, which is possibly the best film ever made about rollerblading in Cincinnati that was ever produced. This is a film about young Mitchell Goosen, whose parents go off on some sort of fucking archaeological quest, and he is left to go live with his aunt out in Cincinnati, who is who's also quite known as being the secretary from Ferris Bueller's Day Off and a bunch of other awesome things in the 80s. She was also in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, played the annoying attendant in that. This is one of those. Oh yeah. This is one of those movies where, like, I was 13 when this came out. I was all about Mortal Kombat and fucking Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, and this is one of those movies that was always fucking on when I would come home. I would get home from school, throw my fucking book bag down, and it was either Airborne, Class Act, or fucking Sidekicks that was on TV. And I was always watching one of those 3 films. So this is the one I just happened to pick today because why not? This is one of those movies that I would always watch. I've seen this movie way more times than anybody fucking should. I always thought rollerblading was fucking goofy as hell, but I always thought it was like one of those 90s extreme sports that I wished I could do like that. And fucking, it was like skateboarding, one of those things I just never had the dexterity to do. So I just never bothered. I just thought it was cool. Like, it was just such a 90s thing, rollerblading. And surfing as well. He's a fucking surfer, but he learns to rollerblade and play ice hockey because that's what this movie's about. You got to fucking, he's the new kid at school and he gets picked on and bullied. Jack Black's in it and he's kind of a dickwad. This fucking stupid goddamn movie. Seth Green is awesome in this. It's very fucking 90s. It's very fucking corny and lame. But it's also one of those movies that if I own it on DVD, it's one of those Warner Brothers classics where I actually had to like order it special, and Warner Brothers burns you. Like someone at Warner Brothers has a fucking job where the phone rings and they're like, yeah, some fucking idiot in New Hampshire wants a copy of Airborne. Can you rip a copy? And they're like, yeah, sure. We never put it in a mass production. So into a computer it goes, and they just print you off a copy of Airborne and mail it to you directly. This is one of those films, along with Class Act, which I also own, and it's the same goddamn thing. This movie, it's a bad, corny 90s movie that I fucking love. I will just throw this movie on and just enjoy it for what it is. It's also, but on a serious note, this movie does have one thing that is awesome, is the rollerblade race at the end of the movie is fucking awesome. Some of the shit they do going down that hill, the stunt guys, is fucking crazy. Like going like under like 18 wheelers and shit like that, going down like these crazy hills. It is pretty fucking gnarly, as it were, because it's the 90s. If we're gonna go back to it, but I really don't have too much more to say about Airborne. I can't say much more about Airborne. I would recommend it. Just if you've never seen it, I would recommend it because it is it's one of those movies where it almost defies criticism because of how lovably, like, everyone who made this liked making this movie. It's a fun movie. It doesn't demand a lot of you, and it's just enjoyable. It's got some good lines. All the characters are pretty rad, and it's just fun. It's just a fun way to spend 90 minutes of your day. And I used to do it all the time as a kid, and it's one of those movies I'm just happy to throw on every now and then just to get like a little nostalgia kick. That's Airborne. That's all I got. So I don't know what you expect from me more on Airborne.
Okay. I mean, I feel bad that I kind of get swept up in talking and hearing my own voice and talking about my film. So what's your favorite scene in Airborne? Walk me through your favorite scene in Airborne.
Dude, I mean, is there a favorite scene in Airborne? I don't even know if there is. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, choose one that really just choose one that's a great example of why this film's great. One scene that explains why this film's so fucking great.
I can't even say it's a great film because it's obviously not a great film. But
why this film is great to you?
It just does.
Why is it
just like it just does all of these. It does all of these cliche things very well. It's, you know, the new kid who comes to town gets bullied and fucking becomes friends with everybody. It's just like it does all of these tropey things in a very 90s way with like rollerblading and surfing and fucking. It's just very enjoyable. Like all the little bits of it. Like I said, I like the race at the end is pretty awesome. It's just got a lot of great gags and all the characters are fun. It's just a fucking fun movie. It's just fun. I just enjoy it. If nothing else, put it on for 90 minutes and just to get an opinion on it, and then chime back in the comment section, because I would love for anyone experiencing the magic of Airborne to have that experience for the first time. I also I have these two friends on Facebook here that pretend to be Wiley and Mitchell Goosen. Their profiles are Mitchell Goosen and Wiley, and they friend requested me out of nowhere. I have no idea who these people really are, but they are adamantly in character all the time on Facebook. And Wiley hit me up to draw a poster for Mitchell's birthday, which was coming up. So I don't know who these people are, but someone actually commissioned me to draw a fucking Airborne movie poster, and I did, and I sold a bunch on my website because of that person. So, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one out there. So I really would encourage you to place that special order to get your DVD copy from Warner Brothers. There's someone just waiting for that order. Just pick up the phone.
I mean, the talking point of Airborne for me that's interesting is how different Australia and America were. We didn't have HBO in Australia. Like, literally, it wasn't until, the late 90s, early 2000s where we got what you guys call cable TV. We pretty much had the commercial stations, and that was it. There was like 5-6 stations, and that was it. Yeah. Movies only played at 8:30 at night with ads, and that was it. So we didn't have the HBO kind of culture you guys did. So the only way to see something like Airborne was on VHS at the video store. Yeah, there was never a time where you were flicking. We didn't have that. We didn't have that culture where it was always on when I was a kid. We just didn't have that because films didn't get played all the fucking time. It pretty much was, there were certain films that would get played more than once, and those ones that were played more than once were usually a special event. Like if they played Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Superman the movie, what they did is they actually simulcast it on FM radio. And so what you do is you turn your TV on, turn the volume down, you turn on your radio, which was through speakers really loud, and it would be in Dolby stereo. And it would be an event. And they were the only films they would play more than once. It was advertised for weeks ahead of time, and there was like full page ads in the newspaper that were going to do it, and stuff like that. So we didn't have that culture of really, let's just call them fodder films, getting played ad nauseum in Australia. We just didn't grow up with that. So the only time you could do it was to consciously go get the VHS and watch it. And because I worked in video stores from the age of 15 and watched everything, I saw Airborne back then. Was it ever in the cinemas? I don't know.
I think it was, yeah.
I certainly didn't find out about it until it was on VHS. I didn't know it existed. And I fucking hated it. Other than I do remember I watched it more than once, but what I do is just fast forward to the stunts, what you were talking about, like that ending sequence. I wouldn't watch the film. I just fast forward to any time there was actual professional rollerbladers. Anytime these guys were on screen, I was fast forwarding. But anytime it was actually the stuntmen, I'd watch it. And so
that whole end sequence, That whole end sequence is legitimately amazing. The end sequence is fucking
legitimately
great.
amazing. It's worth watching the film for that, but I would say just fast forward to that. You don't need any context for it. Just watch that and go, wow, that's some really good stunt work. But in saying that, I hated this film because it just bored me and it just was really dumb. And I was also at that age where I'd started to get snobby. But my snobbiness didn't extend to the fact that I loved Gleaming the Cube. This is just me saying we all have our fucking kryptonite.
And to be fair, like
Gleaming the Cube.
And to be fair, like, you know, I'm watching this movie at 13 years old, and you're probably in your early 20s at this point. So, like, well, this would be your Gleaming the Cube, where this is like, it's that generation gap where, you know, like this is what I had when you had like that at that age. So.
And the other thing was that I skateboarded and I loved the Bones Brigade, and because the Bones Brigade are the stunt guys in Gleaming the Cube, you know, like literally I used to stop and pause and try and look at the moves and how they were doing them, because we were, you know, the Bones Brigade pretty much single-handedly introduced ollies and stuff. So, you know, it was a matter of studying it. So my other point was, though, I loved Gleaming the Cube and I watched it more than I probably should have. But I tried to watch Gleaming the Cube last year and I just couldn't fucking do it.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Very, very few films that I actually will stop once I start. In fact, it's a matter of pride to me that I don't stop things that I start. I won't say I stopped it, but I will say that even less than stopping a film is me actually picking up a device and starting looking on Facebook and stuff. And I ended up just getting distracted. It just could not hold my attention. And I am the world's biggest Christian Slater fan, mind you. Like, the world's biggest Christian. My love for Christian Slater knows no bounds. But even that wasn't enough to keep me fucking engaged with Gleaming the Cube as an adult. I'm just not at that jam.
That's cool, man. Like we've already spent way more time on Airborne than we need. I love this movie, and I fully admit that I've exhausted the ability to discuss Airborne to anybody.
Yeah, I know. I just don't want to dominate the fucking show.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about.
I'm about to talk about another film I fucking love, and
this just goes to show that our definitions of comfort food are very fucking different. So let's dive into the next film, which is like a genuine fucking classic film. So.
The only through line with both of us is these are films these are still switch my brain off films. Like, these are films that have deeper meaning and themes if you look for them, but you can also just watch them on the surface and just enjoy them. And this film here, Jesus Christ, talk about a life-changing fucking film. Obviously, like, I don't even know where to fucking start with this film. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I loved Happy Days. I loved Happy Days, the TV show. Happy Days and Star Trek played on a Sunday evening from 6 till 7 o'clock, I think it was. And they were the only two TV shows at any time that my parents would let us eat together and watch TV. So it was the only time the family watched TV together while eating. Like, the dinner table was for the dinner table talking. But on a Sunday night from 6 till 7, we were allowed to watch Happy Days and fucking Star Trek back to back, which was actually an hour and a half because Star Trek ran an hour. But anyway, and so I loved Happy Days, and I loved Happy Days from before I can't remember a time when I didn't watch Happy Days, and I thought it was just the greatest fucking thing. Because again, this goes back to that being programmed by the boomer generation thing that we were talking about, where I didn't realize what was happening. I just loved the 50s and I loved being in that world and I loved the Fonz and blah blah blah. Then I saw that little film called Star Wars, and when I saw that little film called Star Wars, there was a lot of things I loved and that changed my life about Star Wars, but the thing that changed my life the fucking most was a dude called Han Solo. And without getting too into it, it's the film where I had to learn that films weren't real and that Han Solo wasn't a real dude I was ever going to be able to meet. I wasn't actually going to be allowed to go and fly around in the Millennium Falcon when I was there because it was what I wanted to do for a living. Like, the second I walked out of that film, I knew exactly what my life was going to be. Exactly. I knew that sooner or later I was going to go and find fucking Han and Chewie. That was all I was going to do, and I was going to fucking fly the universe, and it was that fucking simple. And when my parents explained to me, or tried to explain to me, that no, that's not how the world works, supposedly at like 6 years old, I turned around and went, well, what's the point in living? And I went into a manic depression and just hated the world and hated everything in it, and really didn't want to know anything about anything anymore, because all I wanted to do was be in Star Wars. And a large part of that was Han Solo. So anyway, long story short, when I finally fucking accepted that and worked through it and realized that Harrison Ford was an actor, obviously I had to go and find everything Harrison Ford did. And we are talking obviously 1978, 79. It maybe took me about 2 or 3 years to really accept what I was talking about. And one of the first things that I found was American Graffiti. And because I'd been, you know, again, like your parents, whatever music your parents listen to is the music you listen to when you're young. And my dad played his 50s fucking soundtrack constantly. Every time we were in the car, we were listening to 50s music. Every time we were, any time music was on, it was 1950s fucking music. And so it was already my comfort food. It was what I associated with family and my father. And, you know, every child is programmed by their dad. So I love that shit. So the first time I saw American Graffiti, the soundtrack was the greatest thing I'd ever fucking heard, because it was maybe 3 or 4 songs that I'd never actually heard from that era. And the soundtrack fucking propelled me. And this was before I understood that, like, this film is a Fellini film, or that this was stealing from the French New Wave, or all the other academic elements of why American Graffiti became, and still is, I think, the most successful independent film ever made, the highest grossing independent film ever fucking made in the history of the world, and that changed the face of cinema. You know, American Graffiti is just as influential on the world of cinema as Star Wars was, but this is all moot because we're talking about the personal attachment. But anyway, I watched this film, and I watched this film because A, it was George Lucas, so it was made. I understood directors by this time because I'd started becoming obsessed with films, and I knew it was made by the same guy that did Star Wars, and that Han Solo was in it. They were the 2 things I was watching. And then the third thing was it was Richie Cunningham was in it, Ron Howard, and he's pretty much playing Richie Cunningham in it too. So immediately, before I'd even seen this film, I kind of already knew what this film was. And as soon as it started, I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old, I kind of was really comfortable in the world that it was telling me. You know, I was very comfortable with this film. It's almost like this film was built to be comfort food for me before it even was comfort food. And I watched this film, and there's times when I just feel like getting drunk and fucking watching a film for the music and the soundtrack, and this is the film. And I end up watching this about 3 or 4 times a year. I watch it endlessly. It's loose structure. It's idea of this night, you know, so many films since have done this, you know, a night in the life of, but this was the first hangout film where, and that's the thing, is this film, before I even knew what a hangout film was, there was times when I used to watch this film as a kid because I just wanted to hang out with those dudes. Because, you know, truth be told, I really didn't have many friends at school, and I was a complete fucking asshole. And, you know, my friends were movies, you know, my best friends was the Breakfast Club and the dudes in American Graffiti, you know, and so there was times when I came home every day from school and I pretty much just hung out with these dudes. I would feel like hanging out with my friends. I didn't go outside. I just put on these movies and hung out with my friends. And this was one of those films. So there was times when I watched this film 3 or 4 times in one day, you know, and I'm not talking like times rare. I'm talking like sometimes for every weekend on a Saturday morning, I just chuck it on, just like Raiders. I'd sometimes do the same thing or whatever. So this film really became a part of my DNA really early. And it wasn't until I learned about films that I began pulling it apart and realizing why. And the scene I'm going to choose from this one to explain why I fucking love this scene is just like, I think nearly every film I'm talking about, in fact, I am, in one way or another, every film is a Western that's leading to a showdown. And this film is all about the fucking showdown between John Milner and his fucking fast hot rod and the arsehole who's come into town with the fucking swagger and the hat, which is Harrison Ford. Bob Falfa, fucking zipping around looking for fucking Milner. And he's coming in, you know, Milner rolls into town. And as I said, Harrison Ford was the star of this goddamn film, even though he's in the film for maybe 5 minutes. But his presence is felt throughout the film because the coolest thing about it is John Milner, who was the Fonzie character of the film. And Fonzie obviously was the god as a kid. And so Milner turns up in town and starts asking around, you know, you're seeing John Milner. And Milner's, you know, got so much fucking cool. And, you know, he's the fastest guy in the fucking valley. You know, he's the fastest gun in the West. He has nothing to prove. He's not going to prove. And he's also got that fucking false macho thing going on that you put on. So he's just, you know, the more cool and calm and collect you are, the cooler you are. So, you know, he's like, you know, if the guy's worth racing, he'll find me, whatever. And so, you know, while Milner's going around on his adventure with a girl who's too young for him, and he doesn't, you know, he's been stuck babysitting and he's fucking annoyed about it. He's got this little fucking turd in the car that's annoying the shit out of him. But while that's happening, Harrison Ford's got one mission in his mind, which is finding Milner and fucking racing the motherfucker. And so the whole film is based around, I mean, it isn't based around, but as far as a kid is concerned, as far as I'm always concerned, that's what I watch this film for, is the showdown. And the really cool thing is halfway through the film, they fucking find each other. And they find each other driving down the strip. They don't stop. They don't get out of their cars. They actually just slow down beside each other and you hear rumble, rumble, rumble. And again, because Lucas is a car nut, and you know me, I'm a car nut, man, and I love people that can fucking shoot cars and know what cars are about. And the one thing that cars are about more than anything else is the fucking sound of the engine. And the sounds of these fucking engines, these two fucking gunslingers in their fucking, on their mighty steeds rumbling as these rumble down, and they're fucking talking and they're sass talking to each other. And, Milner's like, oh, that's a field car. What's a field car? You just go and fucking shovel manure and chuck it around the yard. And, Harrison Ford saying, that can't be your car, fucking, it's only half fucking, it's a piece of shit. And they're fucking sassing each other and they get to a set of lights and the lights are red. And as soon as the lights are red, the two of them actually stop sassing because they know how the game's fucking played. The lights are red. So when that light goes fucking green, they're going to go. The first thing Milner does, which is still one of the fucking badass moments of any film ever, is he turns real casual because he doesn't want Harrison Ford to know that he knows, but he turns to the girl and just says, checks she's got a seatbelt on and goes, hang on to something. And just says it on his breath, he's like, just hang on to something because he knows he's about to fucking go. And as soon as that fucking light turns, and Harrison Ford shut the fuck up too, and the two of them are just fucking sitting the lights there waiting for those lights to go green. And the second those lights go fucking green, the two of them punch the hell out of their cars, fucking back end slides out and fucking smoke and the engines fucking roar. And they only get into second gear. As they get into second gear, there's only like 2 or 3 blocks before the fucking next set of traffic lights are going to catch them. And the light turns fucking yellow. And as it turns fucking yellow, Milner fucking slows down. And Harrison Ford fucking belts through the fucking red light and almost fucking causes a traffic accident. And that's the first thing. And that whole moment lasts maybe 5 fucking seconds. But in that 5 seconds, you get all the exposition you need about the characters and how they actually roll. That fucking Harrison Ford's reckless. He's too driven by winning that he's not really paying attention. Whereas Milner not only has nothing to prove, he's not even going to fucking risk anything to fucking prove it. And, and so many other things that are tied into it. And so you got this great fucking exposition. That's the first time they meet halfway through the film. And you got to wait until right near the end of the film. And at the end of the film, they finally, we're going to set up the race. We're going to go to the race. And so the first thing happens is they set up the race. The first thing Milner does is drop the girl off. And then he goes to the fucking garage and starts tuning his car. And there's a redhead that's fucking cool. Like he checks his fucking twin carbies and fucking, and has a cool conversation with the fucking dude at the service station who's his mechanic. And, hey, this is going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And then it cuts and Booker T's fucking Green Onions come on. I don't know if you know Booker T's Green Onions. It's just a great fucking instrumental. The Booker T and the MGs were basically the studio band for the Stax record label. And pretty much every great song that came out of Stax, Booker T and the MGs are fucking playing on it in some capacity or not, just about. And they're fucking amazing. And anyway, it's a great fucking tune. And it's at night. And you got this great scene. And you got Lucas is a lot of people forget just how good Lucas is at fucking cinema, at just understanding the language of cinema and shit. And so it's just the end of the night. So the sun's just coming up. And there's this big convoy of cars. Like everyone in this fucking small town of Modesto is fucking heading out for this race. So there's a convoy of headlights and the camera's, maybe a mile away from them. And you're just watching these headlights as this cool ass fucking music's playing. And all the fucking spectators are assembling and they're fucking lining up along the side of the road to watch this drag race because that's what, that's what entertainment was. And it's just set up so fucking well. And rather than waste any more time talking about the race or anything, which is also magnificent, I think I've summed up enough of why this film was fucking amazing because the setup to the showdown is paid off so fucking well. And that setup that I've discussed is just paid off so fucking well in every way. And the same way that like the action in the film is exposition, it's all character exposition, which is something that a lot of films these days just forget to do, which is why a lot of old cinema is great, is that they forget that actions can be exposition, just like what I was talking about at the traffic lights with how the two of them behaved in the race. That tells you all you need to know about the fucking characters. And the same thing happens in fucking end race. But anyway, American Graffiti, I adore it. There's all the cast is fucking amazing. Richard Dreyfuss, it's like one of the first Dreyfuss films. Supposedly behind the scenes, Harrison Ford was just a fucking maniac, drunken, turning the town upside down, fucking burning things and rowdy and reckless and out of hand. And, and him and Dreyfuss were just, just burning this fucking town down every fucking night, getting out of hand. And even though his presence, there's just so much, like, watching American Graffiti, you just see, again, what I was talking about with Jan Michael Vincent, like this fully formed fucking movie star that only needs 1 or 2 scenes to be the dominant fucking force in the film. And I think that even if I hadn't seen Star Wars first, Harrison Ford, and I've never actually spoken to anyone who saw this film first to know. But, you know, you just get the impression, you would know straight away that that's the fucking dude of all the dudes in this film. Like, and Richard Dreyfuss, ironically, even though he's got a really big part in the story in many ways centers around him trying to get out of this town, because it's a coming of age story and it's hard. He's the one that's almost the most surprising that he became a fucking great movie star. Even though he's a great actor, he's still Richard Dreyfuss. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to, I babbled on enough about every other film. I'm just going to say American Graffiti is another film that, if you put me on a desert, you know, all these films that are in that desert island discussion, like I'd be happy to just watch all of these every fucking day for the rest of my life, and I'd get something new. I still get something new out of this film every fucking time. But I also sometimes can just watch it as a drunken slob and just grin and smirk and giggle along and know every line and just do every callback. It's magic. It's fucking cinema magic, and just as amazing a film as Star Wars for George Lucas, and showing how much he knows about cinema.
All right, man. I still haven't seen American Graffiti all the way through, so I can't even.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean you haven't seen it all the way through? Like it just you picked it up on TV halfway through, or
it was one of those. It was one of those movies we screened for the cult classics for one of the other theaters, so I had to capture clips from it. So going through it and getting clips from it was the first time I'd ever watched it. So I've seen bits and pieces of it, having to skim through it, but like I haven't watched the whole thing all the way through yet. So it's one of those.
I'd be curious for you to watch it purely because there's so many movies that do what it does later that I know you love.
Yeah. From what I saw, it looked like it would be one of those ones, like, because I'm also very critical of older films, like you said, because like I feel like a lot of the stuff that they do doesn't hold up. From what I saw, it looked like it was really well made, and I liked what it was selling. So it's one of those ones I really do want to actually sit down and watch, because I feel like it definitely deserves a shot. Because I like what I saw, I liked, and I feel like I want to check out the whole thing.
Well, what's interesting is it has this shameless romanticism for the era, but at the same time, it's really like real. You know, none of the characters, all the characters are fucking flawed. You know, it's just really a snapshot in the day in the life, and it just really fucking delivers on that level. And yeah, I know, you know, even when you look at Clerks and you look at, you know, Swingers, and you know, there's loads of films that are literally just in the DNA of American Graffiti that came later, but by the same token, American Graffiti is shamelessly in the DNA of the French New Wave. It's just that most American audiences hadn't watched films with subtitles, whereas George Lucas was a student of film and loved those films. So he literally just, you know, carbon copied like Fellini's 8.5 and went, I'm going to do it for my childhood and show you what I loved about being in the 50s and the hot rods and the cars and the. But it's same as THX 1138. Like there's 3 films of George Lucas's that just really show you that it's a tragedy that he never went back to making smaller films. Yeah. And there's some THX 1138 of that, because he legitimately understands cinema language and movies, and how you cut things, where you should put a camera, how to build and structure things, how to, like, everything is there. Everything is there, fully fucking formed in American Graffiti.
I find that a lot of his older stuff like that, like, which is why I do want to revisit American Graffiti, but THX is solid. It's like, it's one of those movies that I've seen his short film, and then obviously I hit the feature length one, and it's like, it's a cool movie. Like it's definitely one of those movies that it definitely shows its age in some regards, but it also is just a pretty solid idea. So it does manage to transcend my fucking criticism a little bit, as far as like a movie that might get a little lost in through a modern lens anyway. But I think THX holds up pretty well. It's pretty solid.
I mean, and that's the thing, is a lot of people accuse Lucas of kind of being this romantic sentimentalist, and then you got something like THX 1138, which is just fucking bleak.
Yeah.
Like there is no optimism in that fucking film at all, and it even fucks you around and goes, oh, here's the sun, you know, here's the sun and brightness and happiness, and then slap, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah. I'm just looking at the comments too, like Chad, yeah, reevaluate American Graffiti. I think you'd like it, but I know she mentioned The Wanderers. I mean, I don't mind Lords of Flatbush, but the fucking Wanderers was actually one of the ones that was on when I sat down and did the brain dump initially. The Wanderers was in there. The Wanderers and the Warriors. But the Wanderers, fucking Jesus Christ, leave the kid alone with the toothpick in the mouth, fucking baldies. And I'm looking at Scott Fielding too with the American Graffiti Kentucky.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
But I am asking though. I really am asking. Oh, yeah. And hello, we've got some new, Brian, g'day, Dave, if you're still there, I hope you're still there. Oh yeah, Dave is, there we go.
So this is, I guess,
true with less is more and respect the audience.
I guess like reading Dave's comments as well about the less is more. Like, see, I guess that's where the hang up is for me, is like not like that. Those are movies you grew up with, so like those are what influenced you. So me looking back through some of those with a modern lens, like Magnificent Seven. I've seen parts of the Magnificent Seven, and a lot of the stuff that like you romanticize about it, like it doesn't work for me because I've seen so many things since then. And I find some of it to be kind of hokey and corny. Just like but that's also kind of like what a lot of the movies were at that time, though. There was like that sort of serialization of certain types of genres, which were just kind of tropey at the time. So like when you describe something like that as like badass, I'm like, I guess like in like an innocent way, it's badass. Like, if you're like in like an innocent sort of way, whereas like if you look at something like fucking the modern Westworld show, like as a Western, or like Unforgiven, like that is like way more gritty and like realistic. I guess it depends upon like how you actually want to look at like a character as being tough, like, or like what you associate with being tough. Because like some of those things, like I look at those characters and I'm like, it's just some, I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy that character as being tough.
I mean, that less is more thing is very true in the fact that there's a subtlety that you've got to look for. Like a lot of the, like by the 80s, every film like that was on the nose. Like they kind of amplify larger than life.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like in the, you know, by the 80s, you had people who were superhero, like everyone was a superhero in the 80s. You know, and, you know, one guy could kill hundreds and stuff like that. Whereas back in the day, anytime that happened, it was done in a way that was clearly mythical. Like the Man We Know Name trilogy is probably the first films that I remember where you had a superhero Western. And even with a film like The Magnificent Seven, it's a superhero Western in that era, but it's still subtle. Like the odds are still reasonable and what the characters can do is reasonable and the way that they achieve it is reasonable. And one of the subtleties that the older films had that makes it badass is there's always a strategy. In new films, they point and click and they can just have the machine gun and shoot and that's it. Whereas there's always a discussion about how are we actually going to achieve this? Where is everyone going to be positioned? And it's not necessarily done in exposition either. Sometimes it's done without dialogue, where it's just, you can see the two look at each other and go, well, I'm over here, I'm over here. This is, and unless you're really watching and paying attention to the strategy of the combat, you're not seeing it. But there's always a thoughtfulness to the way that action was delivered until the 80s.
I'm not even talking about like, but I'm not even talking about like the 80s. I'm not trying to compare like our eras as far as the way things are done, because the 80s
I'm just saying that the 80s started that. I'm saying the 80s
are fucking, the 80s are like a super like over the top action got turned up to fucking 11.
But so's
but I'm talking about like, but if I'm talking about something like a movie like Drive, like if you want to talk about like the characters in Magnificent Seven being badass, and then talk about like any sort of scene as far as being badass, I can think of like I can think of like just Ryan Gosling sitting eating a fucking piece of apple pie, and some guy comes over and talks to him, and he never breaks fucking eye contact or blinks and tells him to go sit the fuck down, shut up, or I'll kick your teeth down your fucking throat, and then follow his eyes. All you see is his eyes following the guy back to his fucking seat as he slurps like way. Like that's like, to me, that's fucking badass, and there's a legitimate threat there. Like there's a threat there.
Walter Hill's, you've just described a Walter Hill. I mean, that scene that you're talking about is actually a rip-off of The Driver. Nearly that exact scene happens in Walter Hill's The Driver, and Ryan O'Neal does exactly that. Like that, but that is exactly what I'm doing. It's an old school, like Drive is an old school badass film.
It is, but like, it's modern, but it's modernized, and that's why like I feel like the threat.
It's not really though. It's not like modernized. That's the thing. It's directly pulling from all these films, like that eyeball thing you're talking about, and the acting and the fact of not, you know, there's two scenes in Magnificent Seven that literally do that.
I guess I actually, but I equate. I don't see any of those guys as being tough or intimidating in the slightest. Like I see it as kind of, because like there's a lot of like weird like corniness to those movies too, like back in the day. So like I don't feel like there's like a threat any of those characters actually pose. I don't feel like they pose a threat. But like something like this, that like a movie like that or a character like this where I'm describing, it just feels like there's just fucking like ice running through his veins, and and it's actual, there's depictions of graphic violence that follow through with that attitude, that's not done in sort of a campy or cartoony way, and it's like, or a more innocent way, let's say, that actually follows through and gives like an actual gravitas to the fucking situation. I guess like that's the difference, and that's like sort of the lens that I go back on a lot of those older movies with, that I find that the more simple it is, like some of the stuff that really did stick with me being like when we were doing our Hitchcock marathons and I got the chance to see some of those, like a lot of those stuck with me because like you could see elements of the time, but at the same time the performances or the characters weren't serialized in a certain way. Like they were just playing the character for like what the character is, and not trying to give it like an over the top quirk or like a something that like makes it distinctly them, that might actually kind of be corny, but they don't realize it's corny because they're just trying to give it a personality. So it's like keeping it simple to the point where like just that trope can exist around the story works so much better for me than trying to give like these little, I don't know if I'm explaining this adequately, so I guess
it's interesting because everything you're explaining is why I think that the badassness of the older films is more badass in many cases. I'm not saying, like, I'm definitely not going to disagree with you, Drive, but for me, Drive, the strength is because it is a 70s film through and through with an 80s soundtrack. Like it does feel like a Walter Hill film. But what's interesting to me is like Drive, I'm watching Ryan Gosling play a tough guy, and he's very good at it. But it's Ryan Gosling, which I imagine that all you need to do is flick him in real life and he'd be dead. Whereas when I watch like Steve McQueen, James Coburn, and Charlie Bronson in the fucking Magnificent Seven, when they yelled cut, I imagine they just went and punched each other in the face for fun. Because I know they did. Because that's what they used to do. They used to get drunk and get into fights all the fucking time and shit. You know, I've spoken to people when I went out to LA, older people who were around, and they were like, McQueen came in and started a fight one night here, and they just really were fucking tough guys. They could fucking take a punch, and they were there. So there doesn't even seem to be an acting. Like, there doesn't seem to be a put on ruggedness. Like, those guys aren't, like, I don't see the line or the distinction in a lot of ways because most of those guys lived it. You know, most of them drank themselves to death because of that, living up to that image of being fucking tough guys. But they really fucking legitimately were badass. Whereas now, of course, if that happened once, the whole news media would have it, which they used to too there. And there was a lot of it that was manufactured, don't get me wrong. But yeah, when I watched Charlie Bronson fucking chopping wood in one fucking hit and it breaking without any fucking problem, it's a log this fucking big, I know that Charlie Bronson, when he goes home, if he wants to chop wood, he's going to do exactly the same fucking thing he does, and it's going to be just as fucking badass. And I don't know why chopping wood is badass, but chopping wood is fucking badass. Because it's man against nature, and, you know, I mean, I don't know, I suppose it's because I had to chop wood fucking for the fire as a kid as well. I know how fucking hard it is to learn how to swing it and do it properly, and it, you know, the first time I ever got it fucking all the way through was a real sense of satisfaction. It takes practice. But yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a more earthy, fucking honest badassness to those guys. And yeah, I don't really see the distinction of when they're on camera and off camera. Whereas, and don't get me wrong, like there's plenty of examples, and I do agree, like Drive does it really fucking well. I mean, for me, my go-to though is, you know, for the 80s, for instance, is Extreme Prejudice, the fucking Walter Hill. I mean, Walter Hill was a guy who made great fucking 70s action films, and that's why a lot of the good ones now are pulling from that. But Ronan's another one that does really good fucking tough guy stuff. Because the one thing about a tough guy is they got nothing to fucking prove. And that's what I guess again, what we talked about with why Tom Cruise makes me laugh is because he's always posturing himself like a tough guy. Whereas, you know, whereas that thing where I said, like, the toughest guys look bored just before violence. And that's what Magnificent Seven has through and through. Like, all of them look bored. And it's like, oh, I get paid to do this. Oh, and here we go. Okay, this is the part where the guy tells me this and I'm going to have to fucking shoot him. I'd much rather be drinking a fucking bottle of whiskey right now. But I know
sure, and I like that too. But like, I guess it's just in the writing and the way things were done at the time that like I can't get around. Like, where they'll just be like an Ernest Borgnine character or something like that, and he's just got like this sort of like to him that I'm just like, all right, like that's like it's corny. Like there's like there's just an underlying corniness to it that defeats any sort of like just takes, there's no tension to it. It's all very light and airy. Like it's not like grim or like, I just don't find it to be, I just don't find it to be tough. And like, even, you know, like you guys, like you and Jeremy agrees with you, chopping wood is badass. I'm like, I guess it is. Like, I guess I've chopped wood. I don't think it's badass. It's just something you got to do. Like, I mean, I guess.
Is anything more badass than doing what you got to do? Like, what is more badass than do? A man's got to do what a man's got to fucking do.
I guess.
A man's got to chop fucking wood. A man's got to chop fucking goddamn wood.
I guess, but I mean, I think it's like
a little man can't chop wood. A little man, send the little guy out. He's going to be fucking that hammer, that axe is going to be going everywhere, and he's going to have to hit it 20 fucking times to get through. It's just going to be ugly to watch. You know, it just.
I guess I've
seen wood chop badly, and I've seen wood chop well, and you know, there's something really cool about a guy that can fucking chop wood. I mean, it comes back to that ruggedness, though. You know, I like anyone that can work with their hands. Like that's why Harrison Ford's so fucking believable in Indiana Jones. The fact he's a carpenter in real life informs his performance. The fact that you can chuck him anywhere and he can build you a house. He can build you a fucking.
And Harrison Ford sells badass well. Like there is like Indiana Jones is a great character where you talk about like the being bored before a conflict or cool in a conflict. Like that's a great character who's like, he has like a smarminess that transcends like the situation. And
he's overplaying it. Like he's overplaying it and almost camping it up too.
Yeah.
Like he's exaggerating it so much. But that's because that's the film. It fits with the tone of
the film. The film's tonally that sort of consistency though. But yeah, like I guess it's just like, I guess it's the like everybody's you know, we're not all going to agree on the same things, obviously, but I guess it's just people like what your perception of what you think tough is. And, you know, I usually get punched in the face a lot. So I don't think, I guess it's just like, I don't equate certain things that way, but whatever. I mean, that's fucking, that's why these are fun.
Was just mentioning The Wild Bunch is my favorite fucking Western ever made. And The Wild Bunch is, no matter what top 10 list I do of 10 films, The Wild Bunch is always in there. Yeah, Lee Marvin, Bronson Rafune. Yeah, I mean, anyway, a bunch of people are going to agree with me, but I also understand, like, and I agree, like, I do agree that there are some old films where they do what you're talking about. I just don't think that you've seen enough of the ones that don't do that.
The Wild Bunch, didn't you?
Ernest Borgnine in The Dirty Dozen is not Lee Marvin in The Dirty Dozen. But that's why Ernest Borgnine is a pencil pusher in the fucking Dirty Dozen, and why The Dirty Dozen is fucking goddamn badass. But there's also an element of tenacity, like of just, for me, ruggedness and badass is just the guy that is not going to stop. That's a Terminator. Like, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. The only way you're going to stop him is to shoot him. And if you don't, he's going to fucking come back. He's just always going to fuck. And Daniel Craig does that very well. Like Daniel Craig's Bond, the reason Daniel Craig's Bond is so fucking good, just to go off topic 2 seconds, is because of exactly that. Like Daniel Craig's a fucking tank in that. He's a pit bull. Like you can tell that no matter what you do to him, if he's decided he's going to fucking come after you, he's Michael fucking Myers. You got nothing you can fucking do except for hope to God that in some way you got the drop on him when he turns up, because that's all that's going to fucking, you got to have some sort of advantage, because if you're going to go fucking head on with the guy and not flank him in some way, you're fucked. That's what Charlie Bronson, Lee Marvin, all those guys fucking had, you know. But yeah, anyway.
Fair enough, man.
We should move on.
We should move on. Let's do it. Let's get down to my last.
I do find this fascinating, by the way. I do find it a fascinating conversation. We could have it all day, because it's really interesting, the different eras and.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just what you consider tough, I guess. And like I said, you know, getting fucking.
Well, convincing tough acting too. And it does rely on the context of the film too with stuff like, you know, Kurt Russell is still tough in Big Trouble in Little China, even though you're laughing at him every single fucking time because
he's just a boner. Yeah, he's a boner. He's just fucking Yeah.
But you also know that all you got to do is dare him, and he's probably going to go against the guy that's 10 foot tall, and probably going to just keep going even no matter how hurt he gets.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. Is like what genuinely comes across as tough, and I'm always interested because it's always so different for so many different people, and it's like generationally too. Like you being that 70s guy, like those 70s films are so intrinsically like tough for you, and I can't even equate
30s,
like
the 30s and 40s are the true tough guys, like Humphrey Bogart, you know, Bogey. I would not like to get Bogey grumpy in a dark alley at all, because
I don't know.
I know that he knows exactly his limitations and always going to strategize in a way that's going to fucking end up better. And again, like no matter how bad you beat him and fucking hit him, he's going to get up and keep on fucking coming, and he's probably just going to drink a bottle of whiskey while he's doing it, because You don't give a fuck.
I think for me, it's like my list of actual like tough guy. That would be a fun list to make too. Is like actual like tough guy performances that you like in films, because a lot of the stuff that I do love, like I love the '80s movies, but like the action's not like I wouldn't consider Arnold Schwarzenegger a tough guy. Like he's a fucking bodybuilder who makes awesome action movies, but like I wouldn't consider him a tough guy. So like what I would actually qualify as that is it'd be a fun list to put together, to be honest.
I mean, we should definitely do it, because I agree too. Arnold is not like any. I mean, for me, any character that's like built, it's like, well, clearly you spend more time worrying about your physique than you do actually fighting or doing anything else. You know, like I always wait for in those scenes where it's a film. I can't remember which one it was when we were talking about it one time. I was like, I needed a scene that like showed that, oh, and by the way, this guy wasted half his time in the gym just before he went out and did that. You know, because once you have that one scene, it kind of clarifies part of the guy's life, even though the regime is inbuilt. There's a lot of times where I can just tell they're more concerned about, you know, eating well and fucking, you know.
I mean, that's not a good attitude to have, because Michael Jai White would fucking like curl fucking dumbbells and then kick your fucking head off your shoulders.
Oh yeah, no, Michael Jai White and Scott Adkins. I mean, like, you and I are totally on the same. Like, they are fucking tough. There is no dispute.
Yeah. So like, I mean,
Claude Van Damme, not a tough guy. Michael Jai White and fucking Scott Adkins do not want to have them grumpy.
But you can't even like it's hard to like, because like even like someone who's like, it can't like equate. It's hard to rule out like bodybuilder with not being tough. You look at someone like Bob Sapp, who was like a fucking legit badass fighter. He was like this fucking 6'8" fucking monstrosity that just used to just wreck people, and he was like a fucking mountain, and he was a legit problem.
I much prefer the guy with the beer gut that can just fucking go out and fucking take dirt off that shit. Like the guy that won the UWA for fucking 5 years, you know, he has a beer gut and fucking big, and it doesn't matter how ripped the other guys were. He just go, oh, what's that? Here, come on the ground. I'm going to just break you in two. Thank you. You know, that guy was I can't remember the guy's fucking name now in the UWA, but he won the fucking UWA for fucking like 5 years in a row or something. And no one could fucking do shit. And he was just he didn't even look like he lifted a weight. He just looked like he lifted fucking steak and beer.
Well, one of the better fighters back in the day. He wasn't like a great fighter, but he was a tough as fucking Butterbean. Butterbean was just a sack of shit, and he was so fucking tough. Dude would just knock people the fuck out.
And to me, those are the guys that will convince me they're tough.
Yeah.
Just because what else have they got apart from fucking body weight to take a punch, and you know that if they're in the ring, they've done something to get there. Like,
yeah.
You know. Like that's why I love Every Which Way But Loose. I mean, one that we both agree on, which actually
that movie's fucking great.
Was in my original list.
Yeah, but those two movies, we definitely need to have a whole show about those two movies in general. Yeah. I think so. That would be fun as hell.
Let's move on to your this is your last one, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be wrapping things up today for me with a little fucking 1980 fucking 6 film called Terror Vision. Terrorvision is a trashy delight. This is one of my favorite horror comedies. This one is, if you've never seen it, it's basically it's sort of like got like a Critters element, where there's like it's like a mixture of like Stay Tuned and Critters, where there's like this family has like a TV system that like starts receiving alien signals, and then like then like a monster comes through the TV and into their home and starts to do like a body snatchers thing, where it it doesn't even copy, like they become part of the monster. So like and then like these bounty hunters have to come and like take them out. They're like essentially like space trash men. And it's really fun. It's also got fucking John Grease in it, who was also in Fright Night, who played the werewolf in Fright Night. You might know him as Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, but he's fucking awesome in this. He's like one of my favorite character actors, and he's in 2 of the movies I'm talking about today, oddly enough. But he just always shows up and steals a scene. He's one of the like awesome comedic character actors that is so woefully underrated. It's also got Diane Franklin in it, our little French hottie from Better Off Dead. She's in this. This is a really fun
language.
Put these testicles all over me. Yeah, man. I fucking love this movie. This movie's really fun. It's very, very 80s. It's really campy, and it's just a really great time. I love the scene where the kid starts to suspects something's going on, and he goes into the parents' bedroom, and the alien's in the middle of assimilating like it's already assimilated as like his parents, but it's in the middle of like assimilating his grandpa, and like a head pops out from under the sheets, and like there's a bunch of writing in the sheets, and like he sees his parents like heads and legs sticking out, and then grandpa's head comes out, and he's like, just taking care of business, and he goes back under, and he's just like, oh, what's going on? It's like, yeah, it's a fucking wonderful trashy delight with so many great one-liners, and it's really a lot of fun. This is one of those movies I'm happy to watch with some friends who've never seen it before, and it's one of those movies. It's a lesser known film too. It's one of those ones that slipped by a lot of people back in the day, and if you've never seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. I think Shout Factory or Scream Factory or Shout Factory, one of the two, just released like a really good Blu-ray remaster of it, and it's totally worth the $20. It's a trashy delight that's well worth your time. Watch it with some friends, have some beers, fucking super good time. That's all I've got. That's fucking. I mean, there's not much more I can get into with TerrorVision. It's not American Graffiti.
What's your favorite sequence?
It would probably be.
I just remember there being lots of really mad. Like there's like. I full confession. I loved this movie on VHS. Like nice. I loved it so much.
Awesome.
That I mean, it's a film that I've seen many times.
I honestly never would have thought that.
I used to watch it with Night of the Comet.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I used to watch back to back.
Yeah, I can see that.
But, and I'm really ashamed to say this because it's not a testament to the fucking film. I don't think I've seen this film since VHS. Really? I mean, I saw it on VHS like maybe 50, 60 times. And it's not a lesser known film to me, but it's one that somehow until today has fallen through the cracks for me. And I really wish I'd looked at your list and paid attention a little closer because I would have loved to have revisited this.
It holds up, man.
I don't think this one will be one of those ones where I watch it now and I'm like, oh, this is shit. I think I'm going to fall fucking back in love with this.
Oh, yeah. Like, you can't, like this movie, it's so self-aware. Yeah, it's such a self-aware movie. Like, there's no way you can, like, go into this with, like, a critical eye and, like, tear it apart. Like, it's just fucking fun. It's just a fun, trashy monster movie. Yeah, it's so good.
I remember, like, Night of the Comet. And I watched Night of the Comet about 2 years ago again, and I think I loved Night of the Comet even more now than I did back then. Like, I was just constantly awed by how well made it was for what it was. I was like, how the fuck do you know all that? Like, it's almost like you've got, your understanding of fucking shit there. No, I just remember being goofy fun.
Oh, yeah. And it's even got like
Creep Show was another one I used to watch with it. Like, it was just one of those.
Yeah. This is similar to like Fright Night, and it's got like a Vincent Price character with like they're watching like a late night chick who what made monster movies. The Medusa character, she's like a hostess of like this campy horror show, and she's one they wind up calling to help out and save the day. And she's got like the rubber monster fucking Medusa head on.
I'm trying to remember there was a line, like there's several quotable lines. Like there's a lot of really cool so quotable. But there's one that I grabbed onto, like to the point where it kind of. You know how there's certain lines from movies that you use so often when you're young and you use them as it goes through and you forget it's actually from a movie, and then you see that movie, like that's what's going to happen when I watch TerrorVision. I'm going to be like, oh shit, that's where it came there, and I'm trying to remember which fucking line it was now. That'll have some of the really memorable fucking one-liners for me.
Two of the ones that I use all the time, like I just said in that fucking scene, is the just taking care of business. I use that I say that all the time to like maybe 3 people on the planet who fucking know what I'm saying, but I say that to everybody. So there's maybe 3 people who know what I'm talking about. But and I like the one with John Grease where like he plays like the fucking metalhead and they're like teaching the monster to talk, and he starts playing like metal, like some metal song, and the monster's like going crazy. He's like, he's into metal. It's like kiss the boot, and he's fucking. It's just like there's so many fucking awesome shitty one-liners in this movie. And there's also a really good one with the dad. They're like the dad's like trying to. I think the dad's like a swinger of the family, and he's trying to get like this other family into like his like heated pool, and he has like some really awesome pervy line that I can't remember, but he has like some really good scumbag line that was funny. God damn it, just slipped my mind. I had it.
Actually, again, when we were talking cast, like I think this is a film I want to watch with you. Like,
oh yeah, man, this would be so much fun.
Yeah, no, we should grab a few beers, and even though we're international, we'll go and cast and we'll fuck it. This and actually, you know what? This and that fucking Brewster documentary as a double bill.
That would be fun.
Our first fucking cast share.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I really, really want to watch this, and I really, really want to watch it with you now.
Oh man, I'm so game for that. Yeah, TerrorVision people. Like, if you've never seen TerrorVision, it's a fucking really good time. Get a few friends and some beers, and it's super super fun, highly enjoyable. Man, let's get right to your last one there, man. Unless you want, you got anything else?
Dave's mentioned Real Genius. Real Genius is fucking awesome.
Yeah, Real Genius is fucking great.
It wasn't actually on my list or anything, but that's a film that I'll never say no to watching, and I do watch it every couple of years. Like, Real Genius is way fucking smarter, and like it's a really cunning film. Like,
I feel like that would be I feel like Real Genius and what's the one I'm thinking? I feel like Real Genius and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang would oddly go together well enough, not because they're so similar, but just because they both have Val Kilmer, and those are probably two of the most like quotable Val Kilmer dialogue movies, I would think. Like, he has some of his best lines in both of those movies.
Absolutely. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, incidentally, was on my list, and one of the ruling things I did is I was like, this is comfort food. So I did kind of restrict it to films that were from childhood, even though Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is one that I do watch every year. And now I just watch it with nice guys every time I watch it.
Yeah, but that could also be part of like a Shane. We could just do a Shane Black show.
Exactly. Yeah. I did deliberately kind of not go above the 1980s. Oh shit! In this first half of the list, I didn't come up with the 1980s because we do have another 5 to talk about hopefully next week. But anyway, my last one. Here we go. The last film on my list is the original Odd Couple. A lot of people think it was directed by Billy Wilder, but it actually wasn't, but it could have been anyway, because Matt Allen Lemon made so many films with him, and it certainly has his fingerprints all over it. This is the first comedy. I mean, American Graffiti has funny bits, but I don't know if I'd describe it as an outright comedy. And this is the first comedy. And comedies are really, anyone who listens to the show a lot knows, like, I'm really weird with comedies. There's not, I don't always connect with them, and there's a lot that come out that I'm like, I don't even know what's funny. But my shorthand for comedy, and I think I've said this before, is Neil Simon is my sense of humor. Like, Neil Simon's wit and verve and the snappy and the wisdom and the loaded comments and the way that a throwaway line can actually mean 20 things if you actually look at it in the context of the characters, and just the emotion and the genuine, like, there's a genuineness to it. Neil Simon is the shorthand anyway. If you want to know what my sense of humor is, like, Neil Simon is it. I like talky comedies. I'm not as big on slapstick, although there are some slapstick things I like, but visual comedy isn't as much. There are some visual, like, fucking Joaquin Phoenix in Inherent Vice is visual comedy at its fucking best. Like, there's so many times with just the way he walks into a room that makes me laugh. But that's not generally my shorthand. Neil Simon is it. And for Neil Simon, this is the one. This film, God, I must have seen this film fucking 20 times by the time I was 10. And the thing that's amazing about this film, that's kind of like a Woody Allen comedy, is that no matter where I am in life, when I watch it, I'm watching a different movie depending on what I've had as an experience in life. There's just something really timeless, but at the same time, reflective of the way you watch this film. Like, The Odd Couple, obviously, as a kid, is just a story about two guys that are completely different, and you laugh at those differences, and that's it. But as I got older, I realized there's, like, so much more going on in this film. And I mean, obviously this film hinges on the performances. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau teamed up like 11, 12 times. And I love probably about 7 or 8 of those times a lot. But this to me is the defining partnership of them, and them doing what they do best, the best. And I don't know if it's because it was the first one, because as we know, sometimes what you see first is the one, and this was definitely the first time I saw those two on screen together. But the slob and the neat freak, is a dynamic that's been pulled and pushed apart a million times since in things, but again, never on the level this one does. When I was a kid, I fucking loved Walter Matthau and I hated Jack Lemmon. But I hated Jack Lemmon in that way you're meant to hate him, because you just don't like a guy who's a neat freak and stuff, because you hate it when your mum tells you to tidy your room and shit. And Walter Matthau was, Walter Matthau, again, as much as anyone else, was exactly what I wanted to be as an adult. A fucking drunken slob who smokes cigars and throws food against the wall, and, might occasionally wash, but mightn't, and just doesn't give a fuck about any of society's rules. Like, there is clearly he does not care about social etiquette and stuff, and that was really appealing to a young kid. You know, he'll scratch his balls at a funeral and wouldn't care. And then yeah, Jack Lemmon is the complete opposite of that. And that was all that film was as a kid, and I loved it, and I laughed my ass off. And I won't waste my time rattling off 1,000 of my favorite lines. I will just say that it took me 3 hours to figure out that "fu" meant Felix Unger, where the two of them were arguing. Because as a kid, we weren't allowed to say fuck, and because "fu" was such a good code and such a cunning way, like no one had actually said fuck in cinemas. And there was no movie that had said the word fuck out loud ever in a movie. And the fact that this movie was able to use "fu" as Felix Unger and not actually indicate that it was fuck you. Again, that genius of writing, and that 10 or 11, I just thought that was the smartest thing I'd ever goddamn heard. How you get around the censorship code and how you get around the fact you can't say damn, even, you know, people kicked up a boo-hoo when Charlton Heston said, you know, damn dirty apes. And that was like a controversial as shit. You know, the fact this film's saying "fu." Anyway, but that's a really an encapsulation of the millions of fucking, like I can literally probably see it, close my eyes and quote you the whole fucking film and laugh my ass off at every joke again. And it never gets stale. Like the jokes never get stale because the delivery is so electric. The delivery is so full of energy that the dialogue just never loses its fucking zest, no matter how many times I see this film. But what's really interesting about this movie is that element I talked about, like that I have with some Woody Allen films, where it depends on what I've experienced in my own life as to what I see. And as I get older, the film gets deeper and more meaningful. And I'm still shocked that the film is actually deeper and more meaningful, although I'm not, because I know what Neil Simon does, and that's what he does. These cunning things that you can laugh at on the surface, but if you actually read into them, what's happening, there's a real commentary on life and on friendship and on a lot of things. And what this film is all about, that I find amazing, is that it's a study, again, like what I was talking about with Big Wednesday, the reason why I love The Wild Bunch. Like, these films are all studies in masculinity. And what this film does so amazingly is I can only imagine how sort of daring it was at the time, because until, you know, the late 50s, early 60s, divorce wasn't even anything that happened except to losers. And divorce wasn't something that was socially acceptable at all. And the idea that these men actually say out loud, and that's the thing, is I was so, you know, I just didn't hear as a kid. But when you listen to their conversations, like literally there's a line where they talk about the fact, you know, oh, we kind of got to, we've got to actually be good guys now, or our wives are going to lead us. Like, what the fuck? I much preferred the way my dad was, where he could just be a shit, go out drinking, come home and his wife's always there. Like, what the fuck's with having to put in effort in a relationship? What the fuck is this not being a man's world anymore? You know, and this confusion, like they actually talk a bit about how confused they are about, very much ironically, like the conversations I hear now regarding the Me Too movement. This film has conversations like that about the idea that a woman could divorce them now and they could take half of everything, and that society isn't going to immediately villainize the woman, because that was what used to happen. And this film talks about all of that. And they talk about it while they're playing poker, fucking smoking and drinking whiskey and being men and yearning for these olden days. And there's like a little barometer between the 5 or 6 of them. Each one's on a little different scale of that metric of where they are. And then you got Felix Unger. And Felix is the postmodern man in this. And this is what's amazing. As a kid, I didn't want to be Felix at all. Whereas Felix pretty much, even in 2020, would be fine with gender dynamics and with the way the world fucking works now. And this film, again, you know, things I didn't know. You know, as a kid, I was programmed in the John Wayne fucking era. Men don't fucking cry. Men don't fucking cry. And in this film, the fact that he cries is what gets him the women that everyone wants. And these women talk about him being sensitive and everything. And the other guys that are with him talk about how maybe we should pretend to be sensitive because we get more women. You know, and maybe that's how you do it now. Maybe we've just got to put on this act, whereas Jack Lemmon's being legitimately that guy. Maybe we've got to put on this act to get women now. And I mean, I'm just touching on like a handful of the fucking thing. This film is really fucking amazing for all of that. And in all honesty, it wasn't until I watched the film in my 30s, so I'd probably seen the film 200 times by this time, that I even noticed that element of the film, which now to me, when I watch the film, is actually totally what the film is about. It's about men trying to learn to fucking operate in a new world. And again, the other thing that's really touched on a lot is, again, mental illness was this thing that was totally, men don't get mentally ill, men don't go to a therapist, men don't fucking talk about their feelings, men don't fucking show weakness, men don't, all this programming of this tough guy, which is, you know, feeds straight into that conversation we were having too about what a badass is. Like all those things as well are all mixed into this fucking hodgepodge of things. And the fact that, you know, Felix is so in touch with his feelings and so happy to tell you that he's feeling scared, that he's feeling frightened, that he's overwhelmed, that he misses his wife. And the fact that, you know, he's the one that does the cooking, you know, he's the one that does the cleaning, and he loves doing that. And this redefinition of gender, like there's so much in this film that's postmodern that just really to me went, you know, I didn't even notice. And I cannot even imagine how this highly successful, like I think it was the most successful comedy of all time at the time when it came out, how this film was even read back then with what it's actually doing, because in many ways it's kind of crucifying so many of the things that define like the John Wayne era and all of that sort of shit. And at the same time, I'm talking about all this shit. You can also just watch this movie and laugh at the fucking wit and verve and energy. You don't have to see any, I mean, it's there and they're saying these, you know, I'm not reading into it really because this stuff is actually said explicitly. It's just that, as I said, I mean, I didn't notice it was being said explicitly until much later. But that's why this film is amazing. And every time I go and watch it, I fall more and more in love with the multiple ways that you can watch this film. And the fact that there are some films where you're watching it wrong. Like, you know, if you watch, say, Fight Club and you think that Tyler Durden is a fucking hero, you're clearly watching Fight Club wrong because the film is telling you not to watch it that way. This film, however, it's hard to say what the wrong way to watch it is because there are so many different ways you can watch it to get enjoyment out of it. And none of them are wrong as long as you're fucking enjoying it. And yeah, you've got these two central performances that are obviously iconic. And, you know, if you're talking about screen duos, if these two aren't in the conversation along with like Paul Newman and Redford and Butch Cassidy and stuff like that, then you're not even having the conversation about best screen duos. You know, Gosling and fucking Russell Crowe in Nice Guys is a new one, for instance. But the supporting players are all these familiar faces to anyone who knew films. Like every single person in this film you'll recognize but might know their name. But their performances are all just perfect. There's not even close to approaching a mediocre performance in this film. Like every single performance is just fucking amazing. And that's the other thing that happens the more time I spend with this film, the more that there are times when I literally watch it just for one of those background characters that may only have 5 lines, but it's in nearly every frame anyway. And just watching what they do. It's a film, yeah, and it's anytime I need to guarantee I'll laugh, like, oh, I'm not in the mood for that sort of comedy, I will just chuck on The Odd Couple because it is a film that will always win me over. If I'm pathologically, psychotically mad, if I'm manically depressed, if I'm going through pain and suffering of any sort, this is the film, along with maybe Young Frankenstein or Blazing Saddles, that they're probably the big 3 that just, if I don't want to think because I'm in too much pain, I just want to laugh, inject that. It's the IV of laughter for me. And then as well, as you can tell from the way I'm talking about it, or I can sit there and look at it as a study of 1960s, the changes and shifts culturally and socially that were happening in the 1960s. And this film that is boring down on the way that those paradigms were shifting and the idea that a woman would work as well as a man. And, you know, all those things are talked about, you know, those things that just weren't what the previous generation of men had to deal with, you know, in its own way, it's Fight Club, you know, and I mean, and that's not actually a facetious comment either. I have thought about that analogy before that, you know, in some ways it is Fight Club in the fact you've kind of got these 2 dueling ideals of what a man is at the same fucking time. And they're both extremes. In the same way that Ed Norton and Tyler Durden are both extremes of a certain type. I don't know. I can talk all day. As you can tell, I can talk all day about how fucking great this film is. It's perfect. It's a perfect fucking comedy, perfect film, perfect.
I've never seen Odd Couple. The only Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau movie duo I've seen both the Grumpy Old Men movie. I remember Grumpy Old Men being decent. I can't remember really. I saw it when it came out, but that's all I've got to contribute to that.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of those films. I mean, I thought I would be because it was them, but yeah, by that time they're just falling on pastiche and on the cliches of what their relationship dynamics meant to be. Whereas here they're kind of working it out. But yeah, I mean, the thing with, Walter, again, I could, Walter Matthau is in my top 10 actors ever to live, because he could do anything. And that's what's amazing is he often did. Like when you watch Charlie Varick, or The Laughing Policeman, or even Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, like as much as he's seen as this schlubby comedy actor, there's so much more that he could do. And no one played a shameless fucking arsehole more than him either. I watched one that I'd never seen before, actually, about 2 weeks ago, called Pete and Tilly, with him and Carol Burnett. It was the first thing Carol Burnett ever did, first feature film after she'd done the Carol Burnett show. And yeah, he plays this arsehole fucking misogynist pig shamelessly and somehow still kind of charms you. And it's not even like he leans out or tries to make you like him. It's a gift. But yeah, the Odd Couple is magic. It weaves that magic. I don't know how much of that as well as it's the fact that, my mother and I share very similar senses of humor. And my mother and I will literally both just be hugging each other, laughing, trying to control ourselves, no matter how many times we watch this film. And sometimes we'll both start giggling like 2 seconds before the joke, just because we know the joke that well. And so there's also that familiar bond again that just comforts me, that even if I'm not with my mum, I'm thinking of my mum when I'm watching this film always. And my grandfather, actually, incidentally. So yeah, there's a lot of baggage tied up. And it's just, yeah, it's a magic film though. As opposed to, I'll listen to Flaws in Superman and Big Wednesday. And even, no, I won't listen to Flaws in Big Wednesday. But this one, to me, it's perfect. It's perfectly written, perfectly structured, perfectly paced, perfect, everything. The only complaint really you could have is that 90% of it's shot indoors, which isn't as cinematic as you'd want. But the camera is set up in enough interesting positions that you forget that. And you forget there's certain films that are based on a play, which this was, which so obviously are based on a play, even when you watch them. Like Glengarry Glen Ross kind of suffers from this just a little. I'm not going to badmouth that film. It's one of my favorite fucking films, but you can see it was once a play. Whereas this one, you don't quite see that. I feel like I've babbled on for long enough, and especially when you haven't seen it. And I don't even know if you'd like it. I don't know if you'd like it. You might.
I give it a shot. I mean, if I haven't seen it, it's new to me. So
it's witty, snappy dialogue. It's I know you like witty, snappy. I mean, Shane Black does a different sort of witty, snappy, but Neil Simon and Biloxi Blues is another one that I immediately go to, and The Goodbye Girl and Murder by Death. I might have spoiled it. I think that might even be in my next 5. Neil, I could literally just do a Neil Simon show, and there's 1 or 2 duds in the movie collection of his, but there's only 1 or 2. But yeah, Biloxi Blues is another one that I visit. Biloxi Blues and Murder by Death and Goodbye Girl and a lot.
That's another one I've never seen, Biloxi. That's the one with Matthew Broderick, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch Brighton Beach Memoirs first, which is the Jonathan Silverman one, because it's actually a trilogy. It's the Eugene trilogy, and Eugene is a surrogate for Neil Simon himself. But Biloxi Blues, Christopher Walken, Biloxi Blues is actually the film that made me the biggest Christopher Walken fan when I was a kid. That was the one. Like, I do love him in other things, like Brainstorm I'd seen earlier, and I liked him in Brainstorm, but Biloxi Blues is where his performance made me go, this guy is someone I now want to see everything he does, and I have ever since. I saw Biloxi Blues at the movies with my next door neighbor, actually, and we had a similar sense of humor as well. And yeah, I was like 16 or 17.
Nice. Well, shit, man. We done a 3-hour show today. That's what we just did.
No shit, we made Ben-Hur. We try. Well, why don't at least you try? You try to shut the fuck up. I try. Throw things at the screen or something to make me shut the fuck up once I get on a roll like that. Because it's movies, so I can talk for fucking days. And especially with stuff like this, like any one of these movies, like I feel like I only just scratched the surface of what's magnificent about them.
Yeah, man, fucking works for me. So yeah,
Let's
this
just
is
have a
our
little
first.
look at what was being said just quickly, just to see if there's anything interesting. Dave, Murder by Death. Yeah, damn fucking right, Murder by Death. As I said, it might even be the next one. Oh, Chad hasn't seen The Odd Couple. I kind of would have assumed that, but I understand like why you haven't. Yep, Altman. Yep, all the words you say, Chad, but all the words you say most of the time is like, you and I share very similar sensibilities. Same as Dave. Oh, cool, you've seen Pete and Tilly. I don't know why Pete and Tilly had slipped through my. I'd never even fucking heard of it. And then someone, oh, Lonely of the Brave, yeah. Yeah, Lonely of the Brave, good fucking call. I actually watched Lonely of the Brave when Kirk Douglas died. That was the film I chose to watch the day he died, because it's just a goddamn fucking masterpiece. Yeah. Anyway, I'll say check out our Facebook page, as you do, because you're obviously on it right now. Check out Instagram. Check out Twitter. I'm trying to be a little more active on Twitter, but all I've done this week is remind you this is happening.
And if you want to rewatch this, yeah, the YouTube channel will be on the YouTube channel, yeah.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is going along, and the YouTube channel, we're going to actually start chucking up some stuff related to things that we actually make. Like John did My Name is Jonah. Actually, both of us worked on My Name is Jonah in some capacity, but Jonah is his film, and I'm going to be trying to find a trailer or possibly even the short film Sleeping in Blood City that I made, and there'll be the Underground Ink trailer. Which Underground Ink, this leads me back to the thing I'm going to plug twice this episode. Perth Revelation Film Festival, the couched thing. If you didn't catch it the first time, it's the online Perth Film Festival because of the obvious things that are going on. And amongst other films that I want to see, which I talked about earlier, Underground Ink, the film that I co-produced and have been sort of involved with for, it feels like a decade now. It might be a decade, it might be 8 years, might be 7, 6, I don't know. But that's not premiering, that's bullshit. But it's showing anyway as part of the film festival. So anyone that wants to see Underground Ink, and anyone that knows me knows, you know, I've been talking about it for fucking years. So if you're curious about it, that's part of the Couch Film Festival. You'll find links and references for this on the Facebook page. I'm putting them up constantly. I put up that they're showing the new Abel Ferrara, Willem Dafoe film, Siberia, which is what I'm going to be checking out. And I'll probably review, if I don't review it in print, when we get back to watching enough 2020 films to review some, it'll be on that first episode. Don't know which way it'll work. But yeah, the Perth Film Festival, July 9 to July 19. Online, there are certain films that Americans can watch as well, but it's predominantly Australia and New Zealand are going to have the access codes. It's on a case-by-case basis, but if you go to the website, see things that you like in the schedule and click on it, you'll see it. And I'm probably going to bore you to tears with talking about the Perth Film Festival because I'm really excited about the first film festival in my new home city, which will be, as I always joke, the place I'm going to die.
As Adam mentioned, my name is Jonah. Film. There's gonna be some. I might have some interesting news. Hopefully by the next episode to share with that. I don't want to say anything just yet, but there's been some new interesting developments with that film, and hopefully I have some cool, awesome news to share with you next time. And I hope you guys are liking this new format. If you like to see more of these, the comfort food stuff where we just sort of talk about old films and not just new films, let us know because. You know, as Adam said, it's kind of slim pickings right now for 2020 stuff, and especially 2020 stuff we want to see. Like, I mean, I'm getting into watching shit like Bloodshot and stuff, and you know, that's you're exercising your fucking your options there when you're diving into that barrel. But if you guys are liking this, let us know because we're happy to do more of these because this was fun for us. I mean, we went on longer than we.
Yeah, I was gonna say
do.
I'm quite. Yeah, we do this for our fucking selves, and quite frankly, this is, I mean, obviously, I love talking about what made me, you know, and comfort food is going to be just a start. I decided on comfort food just because it's a nice blanket term to be a shorthand to start with. But yeah, I'm looking forward to boring into, like, you know, you're Arnold fucking loving us doing Arnold episodes and, you know, doing comedies and doing, you know, sci-fi and doing, I mean, there's so many different things we're going to do. I mean, having a throwdown of Terminator 1 versus Terminator 2 would be fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, and
there's
I might have
many things I'm looking forward to.
I'll have to come up with some maybe more clever titles so I can have a little bit more to dive into, I guess, with what I'm with the movies I'm bringing to the table. Because I feel like I was definitely a little underprepared for this one with from my titles I came at with. But yeah, I guess that's the show, and we'll have this up and online for you guys to check out in the next few days on YouTube. And until next time.
Adios all. Thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys. Later.